Okay, no, we hadn't started up. I'll just make sure we are streaming, and welcome to the Portal Mountain Development meeting number 73. And we've been chilling and chatting. And yeah, it's been a good
sharing stories,
couple weeks, all kinds of stuff. Yep.
cool. Pipes and
Yes.
such.
Services that professional stuff and
Yes.
stories of all kinds.
Professional. I love that. I love that juxtaposition onto the story.
Yes. yes, indeed. So
Doesn't matter. It's a secret joke.
we've had some kind of just recap discussions right now over what would we like to get into for our few hours here.
I've been making the point that I'm severely
Burnt
burnt
it out.
out.
Yes, so Zhenya has had almost enough of sprinting with the dashboard programming architecture, and that last time got into a way of, I guess, categorizing the more body-based nervous system in this similar way.
Metaphorically, yeah.
So we're connecting. We're trying to create the bridge, represent the bridge between the experiences of our body and how we learn by moving through the world, and what gets represented in the dashboard as it comes along with us, to be a part of that feedback process.
And drawing on the analogy, the similarity itself, the repetition of one layer within the other.
Right, the whole strange loop idea where each layer has to be representative of basically the whole stack, all the other layers. In each layer where you can have your automation happening, you have to take care of everything below.
Right.
For example, I have to eat because cells
Are hungry.
are in need of ATP and have this process and that, and if energy doesn't come in, that doesn't happen.
Well,
so I model...
and you have a feedback loop within your whole body that tells you your stomach to even hurt.
Right. So that's without not even at that level, there's more stuff, automation happening below. Right. So this is the kind of general holonic architecture, I guess. You always see the same layers, a sort of concrete layer of the way things are and how they're, the state of how they're set up, the automation of the abstractions of what it is they're doing at say, a particular layer you want to look at, and then the central parts, whereas you're having the dynamic between the two, the underlying processes that create that balance between the concrete and the abstract, the feedback, creating plans and moving through using protocols based on what your current state is.
Using maps, using mental representations of the world around you.
Right. So yes,
that's what you're referring to. I'm thinking here.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah.
These are, of course, casual meetings, and we like to have an enjoyable. Oh damn! Pardon. Enjoyable meeting. It's for our purposes. We are here creating logs in a way and fleshing out ideas.
Better understanding each other better.
Portal Mountain, which is kind of an overarching term for the research we've been doing for the last, how many? 5, 6, 7.
And even though
plus.
we're a bit of an echo chamber, we kind of are a shitty echo chamber in that we tend to not echo each other properly.
That's productive.
By
it's
properly,
productive,
I mean we don't mirror the exact same sentiments.
We each have our perspectives of what we want to kind of, or what we naturally tend to focus on, I guess.
I think the echo happens due to resonance rather than deliberate enforcement, if you will. I'll throw something out.
Ideal, yep.
I'll throw something into the ether. You'll throw something into the ether. Together, it seems to just work together.
I'm very happy with the way things have adapted and changed and progressed and evolved over time, and to see you now in developer mode, full on creating the product that we need. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's been a long time coming to have all these visions
It still feels pretty
come
lonely,
together.
to be honest. It still feels a little.
Well, I try to do my best. I know I've been promising that I'm gonna hop on like the programming side of things.
I do have like really good news there, in that I believe I really succeeded in presenting the environment in which your programming will ever like occur
Yeah.
in, to be like a very
So that-
simplified, clarified environment.
So like the developer experience.
Right. So you're not stuck like trying to solve a problem that's been solved 10,000 times
Right.
before you.
So you wanted to present an environment for a developer to already have the tools available when needed.
Right.
As they realize that they need, they can't do, so they need something else. So it's already part of the toolkit, if you will.
Right. So the development experience should be more along the lines of, I have something in this structure, in this shape. It needs to be in this shape to go through this process, through this pipe.
Mm-hmm.
All I need to do is map this to this, this to that, this to this, this to that. Like having all of these very set paths of like what to do, so that when you're solving your problems, you're not solving like a problem that's like the problem
Already
itself
solved.
plus like how do these problems get solved in general, plus how do you integrate the solution into what you already have. Look,
Yeah.
it sounds like small types of stuff, but it's actually not that clear cut.
No.
It's only when you have a smooth direction across all of these layers that you
Yeah.
can reason about it, like, oh, this just means that, this just means that.
And that's the only way that a user experience, an expanded user experience of normal people, quote unquote, non-technical, that's the only way that it would ever flow is if you're providing we could call it a platform, which has already integrated all the possible automations of what could be needed below into it.
Right.
And you interact just with the platform.
Yeah, look, nobody's born into a vacuum. Nothing comes into existence into a vacuum. But in the computing world, that's actually how that's represented. Every app is like in the vacuum of its operating system, disconnected from all other apps. Well, in this case, we're not trying to take over that land. Yes, we are, but in a different sense. But because in our view, every app is the dashboard, right? It doesn't have that quality of being born into a vacuum. It could potentially be already
Right.
interacting with
And
well-established.
especially open source projects, it's understood that changes can come if it's like needed.
But also, the more things change, as the expression goes, the more they stay actually the same. If you note,
There's a corollary. The more
mo-
things stay the same, the more they change too, because it blows up.
sure. But like, the observation is that in biology or in technology, especially, there is like this threshold of stability, and things that don't reach that threshold tend to dissipate into time, right? Like disintegrate into different components.
Of course.
So whether it be a biological body or a computerized program, its survivability has a lot to do with its capacity for stability. Lots of big words
Right.
to say very small things.
You're also sort of pointing to a certain necessary complexity in
A threshold,
in the
yeah.
life, in our lives,
And repetition, too.
in what we hold as representations in our mind of the world. There's a certain level of complexity that has to be met for that stability.
Yeah. You know what's a good metaphor for all of the stuff we just said?
Sure. What?
The fractal. So in the same way how when you're zooming into a fractal's edge, you have both stability in the pattern, but variety in how that pattern's applied. at the same time. So even though there's variation in the application of the pattern itself, you don't escape the pattern specifically. So there is like a stability element to it. And if you don't maintain that, the fractal falls apart, grinds it, the edges grind against each other and become brittle and break against each other.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying?
Don't want that.
If the lines start to intersect, you have a problem. And that's what the fractal is doing. It's not letting the lines intersect.
What's up with this chat?
And all of that is high-level metaphor stuff for an image I'm trying to conjure, right? It's not like... I'm not talking about, like, the fractal of the universe. But Kai.
No, right? This is strange loop discussion. And with that, we're going to take a short break. He is back. Oh yeah, I was messing with this chat window. I don't know why there's a heart here, just floating. So like, what do you do with that?
Just let it be. There's a heart.
Alright, I guess.
It signifies the love we have for each other.
Yeah. How beautiful. Yeah, alright. I guess.
Yeah. Where were we?
Just don't
Where were we?
interfere with the heart. Yeah, we were just
Plugging layers into layers.
basically sort of chilling and reminiscing about all the wonderful work has been done since summertime, really, I suppose.
Yeah. You notice that central automation and tactile don't touch the Holonomic because the Holonomic is the entire thing put together. The fourth one out, just like the Holonomic model.
Typically, yeah.
So that would be just dashboard.
Dashboard.
Because that's what they all amount to.
Good. That's the dashboard quartet.
So should I go over like the significance of each layer pre-dashboard?
I was kind of thinking like maybe like we don't really need to I don't know, just wherever it kind of goes is fine, but we don't need to get into like super details because
I just wanted to reiterate the metaphor actually, so that it's easier to visualize what the fuck each one is for.
Right, we
why.
haven't even gone into that. There's also that text that we pulled up. It's right on the chat now. Actually, I should post this
I didn't see that.
to the chat. But yeah, I'm more into like just low key, chill recap, of certain things.
So I figured I'd rail a little bit on Mr. Darren and explain some of those details, and that could do it.
And from what you've said, like, I didn't read the article mentioned, but it sounds like just the typical, but yes, and there's something missing. So like Darren,
he has one of the better
describes really well in a really
assessments.
relatable way to kind of tell the story of what's happening with
Relatable
our
is
world.
not the word I'd use, but yeah. Relatable to us, yes, but for that's because we're primed for it, if you will.
But lots of people are. And speaking truth comes in many different forms and flavors.
Primed one way, we're primed cognitively to decipher the information. Most people's reactions are exactly what he anticipates. This doesn't pass my muster. I must dismiss it right away. So we're not in that boat, at least.
Yeah, I've been there lots. I'm not interested in that reaction too much anymore.
Yeah. So he is a well worthwhile author to engage with. No doubts. The shortcomings notwithstanding, really. Like there's more useful stuff there than there is not. Let's put it that way. The stuff that's not useful, though, on the other hand, is so significant that it's worth discussing.
Sure. Well, is there like a line over your glasses?
It looks like
You
I'm about to receive.
Do a laser beam shit or something.
It looks like I'm preparing for something to hit me.
You're also entering God mode. Like when the eyes turn red. Activating special power, and there's like a heart floating there. That's
special
fun.
love powers.
Nice. Anyways, we were just looking at the recap scene. Pretty wild.
Wrap it up, man.
Or was it? Or was this just paused at a certain spot?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Technical difficulties?
No, I posted. I did post.
All
there was
right.
no difficulty. I was just mesmerized by that shot. So
why don't I go over
carry on. Yep, this little triad of neurology we've got.
Yeah, it's not like your typical biological setup. They have like your they divide what I call the autonomous system to a passive and an active one, which is kind of like what I'm doing with tactile versus autonomous.
Active and passive.
Yeah, mine is more about metaphor, right? So what I'm trying to connect to is the notion that you have sensory endpoints.
Right.
Those
inputs, sort of.
Yeah, so those give you things like hot and cold, for example.
Right.
They gave you soft, hard. They gave you green versus red. They give you loud versus quiet, sweet versus sour. Those kinds of things, like the very extreme externalized perceptions of the world around you. Round versus square.
But also, in the now, it's something that's coming to you, that's causing a signal coming in.
Right.
So
it's the input.
It's your real context.
It's also like your stomach digesting food and being in contact with it. Right. It's
Right.
it's any one of those touching the world.
Any part of this, at any scale, any part of the organization, you can look at and use this same lens system
of touching the
triple
world.
holonic lens system to break down.
Well, I'm only touching on.
You're only on the
first
concrete
lens
so far.
On the first lens. So like
Right.
even your stomach touching the food that's in it. That's its contact with an external system. The bacteria in your gut, that's its contact with your external system. So all of those things send signals into the nervous system, including the rest of the body. So your blood cells, your tissues, all of those things send information up that nervous system. Then there's the collector lane, if you will. It's your spinal cord, the superhighway. Information superhighway, your spinal cord. Everything travels through it and back through it. So a tactile sensation will travel up through it.
Yes.
As thought output will travel back through it.
So that line is still there. What is that?
That is an artifact.
Yeah, of like the camera. Oh wait, no wait, what?
Oh, it's the
Oh,
outline.
it's the chat. Damn YouTube. That's what did it. It's from this. I don't know how to. It's even worse.
That's funny.
So we figured that out. Anyways, carry on, if you please.
Yeah, so the
YouTube
information
chat.
superhighway. Now you've got your tactile stuff connected to your thinking stuff. Well, if you think about it just a little bit, it's like it's getting inputs from two different directions. Right? This autonomous system, it's getting input from the tactile, it's getting input from the abstract thinking processes as well. Commands from here, commands from there, commands from here, commands from there. It's
Sure.
completely responsive. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't have its own.
Sometimes it's a read, and sometimes it's a write to it.
Yeah, but sometimes the read is a write to the other place. So when you touch something, how does your brain know you touched something? Right? It goes through the spinal cord, and then the spinal cord sends a command to the brain, goes, you felt something. Represent feeling. This is the details of what you are feeling. And it goes, oh, that is purple.
Mm-hmm.
You like the color purple. The autonomous system responds with dopamine. Like shit like that. Like I'm not talking about like grandiose discoveries over here. I'm just talking about like your everyday literal experience.
I think I figured it out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's getting dark already, hey, isn't it? Feels like, jeez.
It's pretty cloudy too.
There is that. Yep. We
So,
could
yeah.
turn on a light that might.
Sure. That one?
It's just a red light. Actually, this one is kind of nicer, except it goes wild when you turn it on. So brace yourself. So every little bit helps, I suppose.
So yeah, why I'm kind of like skipping onto the third layer immediately is because the second layer is autonomous, and in that it's just like a very responsive layer. So it doesn't have smarts to it.
Well, this is basically your media.
Yeah.
This is your media that you can change. Like you have a notepad with pencil, you can write, this is my protocols. this
Yeah.
protocol is that protocol, but you can erase it and then update that.
But it doesn't have a notion of what paper is, what pencils are.
Or if you go to do something, you can open the notebook and read, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that, okay, good, I'm going to do that.
So, to bring it back more down to earth, it's like the same reason, it's the same system that is responsible for, like, if you touch something hot, how do you move your hand away from the surface without realizing it's hot mentally first, right? Like, you have like that reflex. So it's a reactive system in that it has built-in stuff to do stuff, but it doesn't think in the same sense. It just accumulates a database of responses. Muscle memory, basically, is another way to put it. But muscle memory being another metaphor. It's like muscle memory, but plus thinking memory. Like automatic thinking responses would be involved in this too. It's all the stuff that you push back to the autopilot.
I'm surprised that we didn't have this specific triad before, maybe, but that it seemed to come out after you've been doing this programming architecture.
Yeah.
That's when you realized there has to be a consistent way of talking about archetype model guild, basically, between the nervous system, the biological, and a technological device.
Yeah, there should be a parallel.
There has to be.
Yeah, and this is that parallel. So we're kind of recreating the nervous system inside of the dashboard to behave and mimic the nervous system outside of it.
Mm-hmm. And so to me, this is kind of taking the neurochemical operating system layers and all that sort of discussion of the biology and all that, and condensing it into the archetype model guild style format of how to talk about that.
Right, which is actually the same subject that comes up once you get to the highest quote-unquote tier guilds in the mediation guild. Your computation, which is just like the tools that you get. So that's React, that's for us, for our purposes, that's React, that's Refine, that's Redux, that's the router, that's the Express server, all of the JavaScript tools that I've been assembling together. All of that is part of the computation. Next level synthetic neurological computation is creating the dashboard, which mimics the nervous system inside of the computation model. And the next phase is the sentient machine, which is to use the entire now built neurological digital system to do guild dynamics. Once you install guild dynamics on top of that, which is just the tool, so the tool can be used this way, that way, the other way, it's still not curated.
This is like giving it a master program, sort of.
Right. The archetypical program. So you install the archetype right back into the concrete implementation of the program, and that's what gives you the sentience element, this feedback into the guild.
Yeah, so like each facet of the guild as you may encounter it is your new language to translate the stack into.
Well, yes, but a more clear point there is that you now have a final binding point in isomorphism, because the people are the guild, the program is the guild. So now you have a complete isomorphism between the two systems, right? And that isomorphism, guild to guild, is what gives
the guild.
the machine.
I'm not sure if I saw that.
Is that what gives the machine sentience? Because now it's in the same realm of the guild. It's operating with the same demand structure, the same supply structure, and that's what gives it the sentience quality.
Yeah, again, I'm feeling like that there's a bridge being made between language. One, you set up your amazing, beautiful language, and two, you give it something to communicate with of other unknown languages to learn.
Which is basically
that's the sentient machine.
And ultimately, that becomes itself, the model itself, which is why there's this whole talk about the model can only talk about itself. it ends up being regurgitated right back. Because
Mm-hmm,
even in the example I've set up, when you start to implement guilds inside dashboard, that's basically saying, okay, well, this part of the used the model to build this up, to now come back and discuss itself. That loop around keeps happening over and over and over again in our model, and that's the premise behind it. Can only talk about itself, and that's the loop that does not happen in the system, which is the premise behind this phrase: the system talks about everything except itself. And which is also the reason why the kind of system that Darren Allen also mentions, which
And
is
Rails on.
isomorphic to ours, is that it doesn't see itself. It operates from the perspective that it does not actually exist, and that's how it hides. It's doing the same hiding in plain sight that we are going for.
Yep.
Except
And
consciously versus unconsciously.
a statement like that, the system doesn't see itself, can be taken as like this industrial, mechanical, political machination somewhere out there doesn't understand what it's doing. But meanwhile, because we don't recognize the system and how it works, that's what's also meant by the statement, is that we, in our experience, do not see it. The system doesn't see itself, it runs.
We're encouraged to believe that it doesn't exist as
And
well.
that brings up an interesting point, I think, that...
And the fact that it encourages us to believe is actually an interesting point on indoctrination, but that's a different tangent.
when you see yourself, this is kind of antithetical of a system because it demands feedback and like a new perspectives.
And when that perspective is an ever-changing self, it means like you're unproductive. Where's my progress?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dill.
How do we move from number 5 to number 6?
They're there.
Break time for Zhenya. How's it going? You got the table stored up? We're still going here, by the way, so, but it's all good, as you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, she's glued up.
You got the side, like both skirts, or just...
It's a block of wood.
Nice. Damn. Is it a thing of beauty?
Yeah, I'd say. I don't know.
Wait till you get that polished. Like, polish the top up to like 600,
Yeah.
like 1,000 plus.
Yeah. But I was looking and like, if I was a little bit more vigilant, I could have like laid all the end grain pieces up so like make like circles. Like,
No. No. There would always be a mistake in that
I
if
know.
you try it. You can't. It will never work out perfectly.
I know.
But when I saw it, the arrangement, like, it looked professionally random. You know, like, you could see a little bit of everything.
Yeah. There's one spot where it's like a 3-sided. It's like a Pac-Man shape.
Almost made one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed one, like a rainbow or two here and there.
Yeah.
It's good.
But yeah, it'll be fucking mint.
Yeah, because now you've got the skirt locked in. The top isn't gonna like bubble up or down or do anything anymore.
Yeah, it's
I
not-
think
it's
it's
not
not moving. So if it's humped or something, you can sand it.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's scooped?
It is. No, I don't. No, it is like it
Yeah.
caves in and
So how do you belt sand that?
just fucking belt sand.
Like all around the outsides?
Yeah.
I guess. Is there like a good way to do that in plane? Like,
Yeah, you're just gonna have to get straight edge and I'll just keep testing it.
right. Okay. You can get it to within like easily a 30-second, probably eyeballing it.
Yeah, and like you wouldn't want to. I don't know. You'd almost want a little concave in the middle because if you spill something, then it'll all just kind of.
Maybe.
Don't ask humans to be practical.
No, we like flat,
They,
straight.
they try to say things that are aesthetic or moral, so, you know. They don't understand this kind of stuff.
Yep.
It's actually the same problem, if you think about it. They'd rather have the pretty thing than the useful thing.
Yeah, it's
Right.
pretty things aren't always practical, that's for sure.
Kill the innocent and save all those people who created the trolley problem.
Exactly.
Because it's only one innocent. It's okay.
But also, like, think fashion.
Yeah.
Like, everything to do with fashion is like, oh my god, I can't move in this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've worn a suit. I hate it.
It's like a robot.
Why do people wear these things?
You didn't get the right suit, maybe. I don't know.
I guess. Yeah, there's got to be like designers who can.
Yeah, you either get a tailor.
Oh yeah. No, you're talking about like people chasing after trends, not the ones setting them, because they're made completely for their body.
Yeah, because they were like the elites.
Yeah.
They had the money.
Right. That's the perfect way to do it. Just
Do you-
everybody has to work hard. That's all.
Did you know that the few first sewing machines were actually put out, like the people that made them were put out completely out of business, out of rioting tailors? Like people who would,
Yeah.
you know,
Seamstresses.
the people that would, you know,
Yeah.
measure where your ball sack ends.
Yeah.
One well, not tailors, but like hand seamstress.
No,
See.
tailors. Those are the guys that actually pushed for the machines to be.
You good over there?
Yeah. Mm. You may as well. I know myself.
Yeah, but you can't really fight certain technological process. Like, so one sewing machine is equivalent to, like, say, 15 people seaming, whatever. Just like. So that's happened all through history. You can't, as on its face, you can't just argue against it because it took people's jobs, right?
Well, I'm not. I'm just saying.
It's a good thing.
I'm saying.
all jobs
I'm
should
actually
be
finding it
taken.
ridiculous that happened as a
It'd
response.
be awesome if every job would be taken
Literally,
by machines.
nobody wants to goddamn work out of necessity. Like, let me qualify that. A lot of people think that, oh, you want to be lazy. No, I'm not talking about that.
Well,
I'm talking about like
the work
do you-
shifts. Your work shifts towards more fulfilling and better use of your time.
that, but I also mean like, do you really want it to be in such a be in the position of, if you can't for some reason find work or do work or be anything to like
Then
near
you're gonna
work,
die?
then you can't feed yourself. Like, how does that make any goddamn sense? That shouldn't be. Those two things should not be tied together.
In
If they-
theory.
In
Yep.
theory. And if they're not tied together, in practice, what we do find is that people don't like to, you know, sit around. They try to figure out what shit can
You
be
mean
done
like if the
and
basic
do that.
if the basic needs are met,
Yeah.
you're arguing that some type of human spirit arises and
Well, you have all
we're-
this energy.
we have
you need to do
food
shit.
in the stomach. You just rested and like, are we gonna sit
And you're
in bed all
happy.
day?
You're happy, you're satisfied. Of course, you're going to put that fucking energy into whatever hobby it is. And of course, that hobby is going to do something with living because that's what we do. So, nobody's going to go lacking shit just because jobs are not necessary to eat. People are just going to eat and do jobs that are necessary
Yeah.
without
It's
worrying
really-
about it.
It's a tough leap for the calculating mind to try and
Well, so far it's deep in debt.
like
Of course, it cannot.
spreadsheet.
It can't figure out that situation because it starts off from a position of I'm already in debt and owing. So how the fuck do I come back out of it? So it's rigged. It's a rigged notion to begin with.
The a scarcity, the idea, the feeling
False.
of scarcity
Which
is
is false.
imprinted on all of us, right?
Nature.
So we can't even imagine that.
It's
Well, if they're
It's a
like
glorious lie.
this is a demand economy, I guess maybe we could call it, in which there's all kinds of things that need to be done, and it's advertised, so like there's just work you could do whatever. Like people need this. There's requests everywhere. That's kind of the dashboard guild interface.
I need to eat.
Is that it allows this economy to be known, to be visible. That I have, like that person had to eat the night before. Now they woke up, they need breakfast again.
Yeah,
right. But
you can already formulate a plan based on those kinds of automated needs. Those needs are automated because there's humans here.
It kind of sounds, I guess,
I need to sleep.
Crazy, but some people like cooking or wake up and cook, make something, like just smell it and taste it themselves. And well, now there's like more for like there's like 3 meals are right here.
The face that people make when they put the food in their mouths, that's what I look for.
So like if you woke up and cooked something for
there's nothing like you can't. There's
for
no
yourself
better face.
plus 3 more, but there's not 3 more near in your house. It's like that's a supply. You would happily find like who actually needs this. That's the important thing to that person is where's the demand. Who needs breakfast right now?
And if you're tired, you should be able to like say, okay, I'm done. Somebody else take over, please. And if there's if there's enough people of the similar mindset, what technically should happen is like, you know what? I feel like cooking now. Why not?
Yeah.
I got nothing else going on today.
Some people get up and go for a jog. Some people get up and go to the local restaurant and start cooking up a breakfast, and now there's breakfast
and now, oh my god, it might be slightly different.
It's kind of obviously it's weird.
Oh
to
no,
think,
it's not the same thing.
to
Being
think
branded.
about, but it has to be understood that there are parallel economies, right? The existing market economy is fine; it can be there.
Sure,
but we're talking about something that kind of you could look at it as
it's the gift
just
economy.
existing in parallel, right?
Yeah, and the gift economy is generally the kind of economy that you find in your household. Like, you don't pay to grab something out of the fridge unless you're in that roommate situation where everything is actually just works like a shop. But in general, like you go to your fridge, you don't think about paying somebody for it. It's already like taken care of by the other system that you're working through. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and everybody's got access now.
Yeah, if it makes it to your fridge, assume it's free. Like
like if your girlfriend wants to eat the thing that you bought, are you gonna like ram her? Ream her out?
After.
And some people do that.
No, wait, what?
And some people do that.
You gotta do something.
Right.
See, and now we're back to the market. Fuck.
The tit for tat is always going to be the market, and the tit for tat is so. It sounds even cringy when you think about it in the the household
like
situation.
As if you can be living like you're so close to somebody living together, right?
Yeah. My argument is basically the opposite. What's cringy is that it doesn't extend further out. Like, we've gotten ourselves into a situation
you're just
where
extending the cringe. It's not an argument against that cringe. It's an extension of the cringe.
The cringe is
into society. Like you
I mean,
shouldn't have this.
Cringe is validated.
You shouldn't
by
have
society.
this hang up within your own household. Let alone that it's happening in society.
It hit home so hard when I was sitting at a bar. Somebody walked in. It was like 35 degrees ish, 40 ish, and that person comes into the bar.
Like minus?
No.
Oh, hot.
Hot. It just asks for a glass of water.
He's gonna die.
Water. And they tell him, without purchase, you can't have a glass of fucking water.
Because then he's gonna come back with his friends, and they're gonna be stinking up the place, and they're all gonna be asking for water. Now it's a homeless encampment. How are you having? Customers are gone.
Right. No,
what are you gonna do, man?
Sure. You're just extending.
Yeah.
But you see my point. I hope
like you
is
throw
that
a
like
breadcrumb to a seagull. They all fucking saw it. Every seagull down the whole beach, and they're all coming for you.
a situation we fucking created 4 seagulls.
So that's true. That's true.
It's fucking horrifying.
And we shouldn't mention that, not to
It's
drive or put lemon in the wound, but that when he told me that story the first time, I'm like, well, why didn't you just ask for some water? You already bought something.
Well, I was kind of caught. I was like a deer caught in the headlights at the time.
Is real
Jenya
life?
was shocked.
Is this actually happening?
Right, it's only through the comm, like, after the replay afterwards.
It was fucking gross to watch. Like, a human being denied
have
a
water.
glass of water that costs the establishment fuck all on a
They have to
fucking
wash the glass.
smothering hot day. Oh boy.
What bar was
What
that?
a great... Ann Street, just across from the beer store.
We don't have to
towards-
name names or
Tips.
anything.
Well,
Yes,
I forgot
yes.
you were,
Yeah, it is Tiff's. Tiff's moved from downtown, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
But they take no
And I
responsibility.
I'm very friendly with the
no
owner
responsibility
too, but
for
I was
the
like,
actions of their bartenders.
I watched that happen, and I'm like, oh god, this is civilization. This is the system that is supposed to advance humanity somewhere.
Market
Like what?
capitalism.
What? The system that denies a person a goddamn glass of water that costs it nothing to produce? That's the system that's we are supposed to trust with all our hearts
Yeah.
and submit
just
to
saw
in
somebody
its very entirety.
Gwen probably had a heart attack 2 minutes later. While you stood by, did nothing.
Yeah, I'm not a
I'm
doctor.
kidding.
Like, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Yeah.
It'd cause more damage than
No, I know.
solve it.
But this is kind of our outlet for that kind of those observations throughout life, right?
It's gross.
Like we learn and those things,
Those
experiences.
are my formative sort of say
Yeah,
experiences.
They change us to see it.
I just couldn't fucking believe it. A glass of water. And it was literally like, tap, tap. That's it.
Yep.
That's all it would have been. Poor guy couldn't have a glass of water. Next time you damn bell, be sure and be like, it's on me.
Yep.
I just wasn't aware that this is gonna happen.
Yeah, no
It
shit.
was
eh?
about to happen.
Wild. But I mean, the fact that you had this whole experience,
I can't get over it.
like we all are put into situations we don't expect. But
I wasn't
that
even
it
going to be the
affected you.
beneficiary of it.
There's no shame in
No, this is like
in
this is fundamentally the problem with the way we've set everything up. This is an impossible goddamn situation. It sets people up into trajectories that they have zero control over, and the society rails on them after the fact as if it's their goddamn fault. Like
yeah.
most people
get a
who are
job.
most people who are homeless didn't want to be homeless. They had no opportunity to secure
Yeah.
a premise to live in.
Yeah, I heard about, like, on the radio, I think recently, I don't know, something about some homeless camp, but it's like of people who just can't afford the first rent, but they all have jobs. And it's like they just can't get into the streamline, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're like in a tent camp,
What did they do with the tent camp?
fucking bulldoze it.
Mm-hmm.
Set it
Oh,
on fire.
gee, I'm surprised.
Or is it California? How the
Everywhere.
Chinese
It's
dudes
everywhere.
go in there and they fucking all of a sudden this huge tent city like underneath the
Engulfs.
highway fucking goes up in flames. Like,
Yeah.
what happened there?
Yeah, every time you hear about a tent going up in flames, guaranteed it's not the owner who did it. Like, that's some, yeah.
It's
You're
society.
you're taking away the only like little shelter they even have at that point, in the name of I'm sorry, what?
Um,
I'm sorry.
Impression,
Like,
trying to be-
what?
Aesthetics.
impress somebody.
What are we doing here?
Aesthetics. Looks better.
Oh,
when
they're
it's not
bad
there.
people. Oh, I see. So that's the reason why we can
Do that.
destroy everything they fucking have.
Yep.
They're the bad people. Like, it's a infantile is
Yep.
the word I really want to use.
They need to be put in timeout.
No, it's an infantile response.
Sorry, that's YouTube's telling me that there's a new timeout links. You can put people in timeout for arbitrary amounts.
Fuck off. Are you kidding me?
Those homeless people just need a timeout.
Are you kidding me?
Then they'll get it.
This is what YouTube just advertised to you in this in the span of this conversation.
That I can put people in a
Holy
timeout.
hell.
Punish them.
Thank you for confirmation.
Got it.
Like, oh my god. Thank you for proving my point that
Holy okay. I just wanted to bring
it's,
that
it's,
up.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But it just I think I said it like what 3-4 days ago. I actually want to be wrong. Like, if I'm wrong, then none of this shit is actually happening. And we're actually in a much better place than what I'm talking about. My God, do I want to be wrong.
Oh man.
Like, I wish I was. I just don't think so. It really is that fucking stupid and bad. But I'm not a cynic.
No.
My point is not about like it's hopeless. My point is that it's totally fixable, actually. Just what
And
we're
we have a lot
doing
of
isn't
potential.
it.
We
What
have
we're
a
doing
lot
is
of-
just not it.
There's so
Fuck.
much potential right now, like the internet and all that, fast communication, global. Like, this is a small window of time in history to
Like all of
really
the
do something,
all
maybe.
of the output of that slave labor that we've been so hung up on can finally work itself out to not be in that same stupid situation. But nah.
market.
If you want to like get an idea of how that's going, just look at Elon Musk's tweets. Their brain is just
Visionary? I mean, like, if I wanted to have goosebumps on my arms?
I mean, sure. I just don't think the source of the goosebumps is going to be the initial assumed one.
Politics, political jabs, and all that. It's all funny.
No, can you pull up Telegram? Because he made a meme which is like really funny to me. Anyway,
It was posted in the chat, or
lobby, yeah,
how long ago?
recently. This is the one. So,
Okay.
Elon Musk's tweets do you remember Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? There was that robot, the white robot.
Is he like a maintainer? Engineer?
So it's the white robot and all he's saying is like, here I am, the richest man in the world, Philosomite.
Philosomite? Is that like related to Jewish?
It's basically
Climate
a dog
Crusader.
whistle for anybody who's an
And I still get
anti-Semite.
shit from idiots, okay?
So my comment is, oh, what a weird way for Elon Musk to admit that he shits on himself.
It's kind of a weak meme.
Because he said
Get
at the end of
shit
his
from
meme,
idiots.
he says, I still
Oh.
get shits from idiots.
From idiots. So he is an idiot. Ha ha!
So
It's
he's
from
shitting on
himself.
himself. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's me. That's my brand of rhetorical humor. I'm just happy that he didn't catch that. What he's saying is basically a way to say that he shits on himself. I mean, that's brilliant in a way. Like, thank you for being so honest. Elon.
I don't know. To me, it's all like actors on a stage. Everybody's a clown.
Well, he's a fucking moron, technologically speaking.
But who isn't?
No, technologically speaking, he's a moron. Engineering-wise, the decisions he makes are just flabbergastingly off. Like, any engineer will tell you that. And yet he's like comparing himself to all of these great minds.
Well, it helps when
He's
you're
making the
subsidized.
He's just making the worst
Yeah.
possible business
Getting
decisions.
so much government dollars.
His
Yeah.
shit keeps blowing up.
And he just has an
Yeah.
idea. All his is the idea.
Yeah,
it's
it
like a team behind
doesn't even
him
seem
that's
viable, but
actually-
the
And he
government
hates
just
and
pumps money in.
and he hates his teams. He literally despises the people that work.
How do you
for
know
him.
that? Do you know him?
He fires them all the time. Like
So
it's
people
clear.
deserve being fired all the time. Don't you remember they're idiots and their opinions are stupid?
What's that saying? When everybody else around you is wrong, you might be the problem. Like you
Yeah, but if you own the company, then
it doesn't change the fact that if everybody around
now
you
now they all agree with you, so you must be like some kind of genius, right? That's how it works.
bought agreement.
Yeah.
But that's kind of derailing. What
Yeah, it seems like all side tangent. Again, politics and like characters and all that. Like the stage world is a stage. To me, it's just
In his
funny.
case-
Like shit happens.
in
this
his
way
case,
and that.
in this case, he's been demonstrably wrong so many goddamn times that it's not even funny. Like he's repeating the exact same mistakes that got Challenger blown up. That's why his shit blows up. Like, because the exact same business-like decisions are going into whatever the fuck he's doing. So Challenger blew up because some business people pushed to the launch because that makes the money, versus holding off the launch to fix the problems that were noted by actual fucking engineers on the goddamn ground saying shit's not
Yeah.
to par right now.
I think AI is going to have a huge play in company like understandings of problems like this. Like to have
Yeah.
AI kind of checking on that AI management.
for
basically.
sure, but you
AI
can't
should take over management.
you can't use that and dismiss the problem that Elon produces, because
But why are we talking about Elon? Because there's so many retards.
because he's repeating the same mistakes. and he's a
Everybody
good
repeats the same
no,
fucking
he's
mistakes.
simply prominent right now
I
in
don't
that
care.
in that space. Who else are we gonna talk about?
Trump?
Bezos has been.
What about Donald Trump? Why are we past him now?
That's another shit show, but of a very different flavor.
Well, let's talk about that. I'm kidding, but
Trump isn't in the tech. Trump doesn't have products that people use out in the wild that can burn them alive.
what about his real estate empire? You can die in a fire from a hotel.
I don't think that's
Yeah, I
the
don't know.
same.
Just my point is, like, I really don't give a f about.
It's not the fact that it's
like we can rail. Let's pick someone else
Look,
to rail.
look, it's-
Who is the third?
No,
most
I think you're
hated?
getting hung up on the wrong point. It's not the fact that I want to pick on Musk
It's the
specifically.
fact that feedback is being
Mu-
neglected.
is that Musk is the
That
only
feedback
one
is being neglected once again.
in the concrete world
Who would have thought?
that is the example of it, right?
Feedback
It's-
getting neglected.
It's about the abstraction of it, sure, but there are specific individuals right now who do that problem.
It's our pantheon. This is the
current one, yeah.
The world has people and celebrities that we all know, and they slot into the pantheon, the mythological.
It's like, why pick on Kanye West? Well, because he is the current Kanye West that is
Sure.
like
Okay.
doing this thing.
That kind
Tomorrow
of
it's gonna be
validates.
different. Tomorrow it could be a different person.
That validates, and of course Trump is in a different slot than Musk.
Yeah. Musk,
In the
Musk
pantheon.
is putting cars in front of people that
Do a trolley experiment.
do trolley experiments and set themselves on fire once in a while. Like, there is actual consequences that are different.
Oh
One
man.
of the consequences is you get a rally on the 6th of January.
And it's insurrection against democracy.
Sure. Whatever you want to
They take over the government.
Maybe go as far as Germany. I know that.
Yeah. They almost did.
No, not at all. Thankfully, the U.S. is too fucking big.
Oh man. But I do think it is kind of break time-ish. See the light turn on?
Yeah.
That's because I tapped it twice. But Try tapping it twice again. Turn the
When you
fucker
want
on.
it to do.
God damn. Good damn.
Damn.
So yeah, I was kind of trolling a bit there. Just I don't like the politics, like talking about this guy or that guy, because it's endless. It just
Yeah.
never fucking ends.
See that?
But to his defense, it is useful as like a mythological pantheon. Like you have these categories of people and making these types of mistakes, and maybe they're evil or something. And it's just your understanding of the world, right?
I just got this weird text, and it says,
WhatsApp
no,
or on text. Oh, is it this person? Oh, hey Joey.
it says, hello, Lisa told me you have a house for sale. Can I see the house structure drawing?
You know what? I heard that there was some increase, and I've had people like text just saying randomly, like they're expecting you to say, "Oh no, the wrong number," right? And then they'll come back and be like, somehow try to start a conversation, right? Just off that input. Like they won't take it like, "Oh, haha, okay, bye, sorry."
Yeah, no,
It's like,
I get weird texts all the time. Like,
yeah.
just like somebody will just say hey or like hi, like just some
And then like a few weeks ago I had one like that, and after a while it's like, oh, you have to, I can't continue, I have to go from work or whatever. I'm like, this is my work account, you have to like continue on WhatsApp.
yeah.
So my WhatsApp number is like, so add me on WhatsApp, right? We're just talking about like scam texts. Have you been getting texts from people like,
All the time.
oh hey, it's Judy, and,
Yes,
like,
the package is in the mail.
I'm coming down to your street. What house number are you again?
Yeah.
Right? And then before you know it, they want you to like go to WhatsApp.
I never respond to them, so no, I don't. No.
Yeah. If you respond, even if you say, oh no, sorry, wrong number, they're like, oh well, you seem like such a nice person or something. Like, and then they push you to WhatsApp. And then from there they can do scams without getting their number canceled and shit, because it's just WhatsApp.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I'm gonna take a leak now, so we'll.
Oh, I wanted to say, if you can go
You-
if you want, if you don't have to hear this.
What's
Um,
been on your mind?
That the situation in the U.S., I actually view it in a lot more optimistic light than I would say Nazi Germany. And the reason
Me
behind
too,
that,
sure.
and that was has to do with what I yelled last. It's too big for this kind of shit. What I mean,
There's too many pieces. There are to
It's
the
too,
U.S.
it's too saturated with differences of opinion.
Sure.
Like so much so that you can't.
one Führer
Right.
lead the charge or something.
Right, like it's got too many opposing forces to allow for that situation to happen the same way, at least. At least now, for the time being. So, in my mind, the situation is not as dire in the U.S. as it would have been in Nazi Germany. It's fucked up. Look, not ignoring that. It's as fucked up as it was in Nazi Germany, but it's not as dire. It's got the same undertones, it's got the same thing, but the US had that for so much longer than Germany, and it never maturated into anything. Even Hitler himself used the US's racial segregation system to base his own shit on. He himself has failed, right, in that short period of time. Meanwhile, the US has been this gigantic time frame,
Yeah.
right? And it hasn't gone one way or the other, really, because it's too fucking big. And it's still not going one way or the other too much because it's too fucking big. So, from that, I have a much more positive or optimistic outlook for what's going to be happening there. Like, yes, it'll dip down, yes, it'll come back up, and yes, it'll dip down again. But it's been doing that since forever. So we're still okay. Like, I'm not complete pessimist, we're all fucked kind of a person. I don't appreciate a lot of the shit we're doing.
There's not much to appreciate.
There's a lot to appreciate
like-
between individual people, but not in the way we formulate our society. And that has to do with like the tribe versus like building something and throwing a bunch of people into it and expecting them to behave. Right? Like there's a
the
difference.
system, you mean?
The system
systemic-
versus the model versus the family. The model, when I talk about it, it's like what your biology is producing, that's your model. What your family is producing, that's the model, you know. What the brain is producing, it could go so many different ways and so many wrong ways. It's the system.
And by producing, you sort of mean like in concrete context, things happening and interacting.
Yeah,
So
and then
production.
there's the question of one-off versus over and over and over and over again. Like biology is like over and over and over and over again. Having a meal is a one-off, right? There's different things that can be modeled different ways. And systemic thinking is helpful in the one-off situation. Model thinking, repetitiveness, is good for, you know, the rest of it.
Yeah.
Your hobbies, your habits, your family, the people that you know are your repetitive situations, right? Inescapable ones, even at that. I mean, unless you're always moving, which is very few of us.
It's true.
Nothing wrong with that. It's just another avenue. In the holonic model, there's nothing wrong with that because it can have general representations of any of that stuff. It's all good. You reintegrate back when you talk, right?
There's like two sides to a distinction between like the way that nature works to adapt, like evolution, taking different shapes.
Of
and
which
like,
system is a part.
Sure, system isn't in there, but in our infinite wisdom, we are able to separate system, the systemic understanding of what's going on, from what's actually going on. So there's a potential disconnect. In our mind, we can think that crazy things are happening, or any random
It's the
belief can become true.
It's
like,
the
to
difference
us.
between what's happening versus what's being described to happen. The description is not the event.
Representation.
Yeah. So talking about an event is not that event, but it's still valid, right? In some sense. The key is not to get away from taking that conversation and making that the truth of that event, right? Like you're removing the actuality from the, well, like you said, representation. To write about something is not for that thing to happen, but it's still a valid thing to do about something that happened.
Right, not to make the mistake that representation is what happened.
No, this is what's been written about.
Representation is always different.
What happened here is that it's been written about. That's what happened
It's
here.
very philosophical.
And when you think about it, and when you think about that, you got to think
Is your
about
mind
how it's been
twisted in
written.
a pretzel yet?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, that's
Yep.
that's kind of the goal, but also isn't. In some sense, like we're looking at that twist pretzel, and we're like, that's actually the untwisted version of things, if you will, in some sense, because we're moving away from all of the representational craft.
That's
we're
a dirty
moving away-
paper.
moving away from mistaking what's being said about something for that something.
Yeah.
It's like moving away from, you know how we touched on the fact that I'm Jewish?
Yeah.
It's moving away from looking at me like I'm a Jew and seeing me as a Zhenya. Right? Like there's a difference
Abstract
between,
and concrete.
there's a Like, yeah, I'm sure I might represent some form of Jewishness. I have a citizenship, I guess. I can show you a piece of paper
You
that
guess.
says
You do or you don't.
that confirms my Jewishness
Okay.
in that in that.
Oh, you're fence sitting there.
Nah, I never fence it. I might pretend to make a point at some time. But at the end of the day, I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Barrie. My Jewishness is very limited to, that environment. So it becomes like such a fluff word, right? Like, what does it mean now? Right.
Fuck off.
But our society prefers to work on pieces of paper that says you're Jewish or not Jewish or this or
Some
that or the
categories.
other thing. And so your reality of the person and your reality on paper.
Again, this is a representation, which is different from who this individual is or that individual.
And
we're-
at the
we're
end of
not
the day,
just
we're
a-
just ID numbers.
We're not a collection of categories and properties, or properties and values.
And this is like the key about what the system is like. The system will always ignore that.
It doesn't know that that's a problem.
It
that
only
you
cares
can
about
just-
the papers.
That you can just have a reality in your head and be real and treat people like that. That's an issue.
Look, what's important is that the form you filled in, or your bank account balance, or whatever else that isn't you,
Yeah.
or has nothing to
Anybody?
fucking do with you. And if you ever wondered why my emotional counterpart starts to get there, is like, I've been ignored my whole life already. This is just a system that justifies ignoring people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel that
No,
hard.
You sound really smart,
That's a great way to say shut the fuck up.
in brackets.
Whenever I've heard the words you are smart, it's always been in that stop talking sort of sentiment.
This is too much.
And this is also why I have this issue with like boundaries, right? Like, I've heard this so many times and I know how fake it is. At this point I'm like, I'm not even sure where you are at when you say that. Like, it's just
Yeah. Question their sentiment. Right. Like, do they actually mean that, or are they just saying it?
yeah, and I've never meant that.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Smart is like, if you ever hear yourself utter the
You're-
word
oh,
you are smart,
You're a specific.
take a step back and ask yourself, are you telling them to shut up?
You're a specific type of weird.
Which I am not. Right. You're different than me. That's the words that are really behind it. You're
Did you
different.
have like an experience like that with your family, Dill, or just feeling like too smart or something, or like there's something I thought you told me a story, like at a family gathering or something.
It happens all the time. Yeah. I feel like
Being told to shut up.
well, not really told to shut up, but it's
Like
just
you'll have a philosophical
indirectly,
moment
yeah,
or
things are
something
going,
like
way over their head. It's
just
come on.
like he'll amusing.
Can I
Something
ask the
will come
question? Is it almost always feels like it's not a subject that should
Probably
feel
one or
like
two there.
it shouldn't feel like a subject that is too high up there? It should feel like it's a normal. It
Should.
should be part of a normal
Yeah.
conversation, and
But
yet they
and then
still
that
shut
fails,
you out.
and it's understandable why and all that.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to be uncomfortable, and why is it uncomfortable? Who knows? Just life.
They have no answers for themselves, obviously.
Stuff that we should contemplate, life and death, or
You can't do
whatever
it in
is.
proper company. It's another way of saying it.
Yeah, like just tying our hands behind our back, as far as like becoming more as a community, a family, together.
Knowing each other, really. Knowing the depths of each other. Like, knowing what makes the person actually
Right.
tick underneath.
Just putting hard limits on, don't think too hard, or we don't talk about this subject or that subject.
It's taboo.
Yeah. But that's where obviously the real healing would probably be, which we would detect and feel as, okay, that's an uncomfortable something coming up. Something's going to break.
Yeah.
It's going to fucking hurt.
That's part of the reason why we both take this time every 2 weeks to just...
Vent.
You gotta keep that shit in the entire time, right? Like, and this is one of the few
Right.
channels out there where we're like,
We
All
feel
right.
we feel heard, if not by
Let's-
each other, then Portal Mountain Lobby community and all that.
look, these are the things that really bother everybody all together. So why the fuck are we so silent about it in the first place? Like, this is exactly why we're bothered by it.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot talk about it, bothered by it. Cannot talk about it,
Mhm.
bothered by it. And then we're supposed to grow up. The notion of growing up is pay back into the system that takes you to cover up every single one of your emotions just so you can shut the fuck up a little longer.
Yeah,
Oh.
don't get him started, Dill.
Oh, you want to talk a bit more? How about we give you a little bit less money?
How do you
Yeah.
like me now?
Yeah, punishment.
I don't need to get going into this. I've been going at this for 10 years.
No, but yeah, this is like a healthy alternative, if you will.
I really
To-
have.
Just snapping at random people in your
I think
life
my
who
break-
won't understand or will be like, "Are you like extra retarded today or whatever?"
My breaking point was a Christmas party over here, actually. We left. I managed to yell at my mom for letting my sister to take advantage of her.
Yep, I remember you told this story.
Yeah, I was
Number of
very
times.
drunk. So I was very drunk.
But by like breaking point, you mean like kind of having an authentic expression, like allowing yourself to just
I
verbalize or
kept my
express.
shit together up until that point to my mom, but eventually I'm like,
Were you on the way home
Yeah.
already?
Yeah,
So
I
it's
was
not
done.
like within party company,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
yeah,
so
no,
you held
I,
it together.
I laid into my mom.
You held
and
it
after
together.
That,
That's the important part.
and after that, my Buddhism is just soared, if you
That
will.
just- that's one of your strike points.
Yeah. Like, laying into... When I say laying into my mom, is like... I don't hate my mom. We have a great relationship and all of that stuff. I was just, like, at a tipping point of, like, keeping my shit in. And
Like
just,
you
like,
would want to criticize
actually-
her behavior or something, right? Or say something.
And she has her disease and whatever also on top of that, and like there's so many
Right.
different factors that are
of course,
involved.
not her fault, but still is building on you to express, like.
And I've been watching that shit happen for the past decade for myself when it happened.
Yeah. So maybe that was healthy, actually. Maybe your
Kinda
mom
opened
took
it.
something out of that, and
Yeah, opened her eyes and maybe
No, it
there's a
opened
problem.
mine, but not hers. It led me to the place of where like it showed me how frustrated I was.
But
really,
it also
Like,
opened
because I was hiding it from myself.
right. There's a lot of power there behind the scenes. It also opened the potential in the relationship between you and your mother to even talk about that sort of thing going forward. So that had been opened, whether you acknowledge or not, towards her. Right. That's a change.
Right now, it's a challenge to get her to have enough patience for the people that she actually lives with. She's never been like on the patient spectrum to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just like a little bit more unnerving because my grandma isn't getting any younger. She doesn't need frustration to be like the
Yeah.
caregiving element.
Like, yeah, the environment just being generally frustrated. Like, and your grandma likes to just watch YouTube or laugh at videos and stuff, and Tanya gets annoyed.
Well, she will just get annoyed by the most random shit. It's like if my grandma didn't hear something, she's got a bad hearing. Like
Yeah. Right.
Well, yeah, that's like a little bit of resentment too. Just like
Could be mixed up. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
it
Just
is
waiting
like
for
that.
excuses,
Yeah.
then you're in a bad spot, and that's a bad environment.
And I've
right?
caught myself being like this with my mom, but I've also, because I've been catching both situations. I've been like, okay, well, I get her, but I'm getting her because she's annoying me, the relevant fuck out of me in exactly the same way.
Yeah. That you can relate to.
So I'm like, Mom,
Yeah.
the fuck? Like,
Impulse control. That's
Dude.
what I've been learning about the ADHD stuff. When there's a
well, you're on meds, right? For
yeah,
for
yeah, I
that
started recently.
Like a yeah. I did mean that in like the recent
But it's like
thing, not like
when
you're on meds.
when something comes to trigger you to do something, your impulse comes to you automatically of what to do. That could be a very good thing or a not good thing. So like to yell at mom or grandma or whatever, that could be your initial thing, like, are you deaf? As an impulse. But the skill here is to insert, okay, I've had an impulse, so this thought gets inserted. You've recognized an impulse has happened. Before you act on the impulse, there's a routine which you have to bring up, is this a good idea? What my mind told me initially, is it the right thing to do? Is it going to have good consequences? Is the future going to be good?
Are there alternatives?
Right? You bring up your memories. Yeah, what else could be done, like possibly with the situation? Right? So, impulse control for...
When I did this in the past, what happened?
yeah, that's... People with ADHD don't... often... that doesn't come naturally, the whole and that would be executive function, which is like an overlaying administrative sort of thing to say, okay, I saw this impulse wants to happen, let's see, calculate is that actually good, was it good last time, you make new habits and all this, which would come up with most people normally as a suite of kind of thing. Okay, well, shouldn't do that in the moment.
I think that's also an unfair assumption, because I do think that for normal people it does come up, but it doesn't always. You can't assume that the normal person, whatever normal being here, is like 100% on ball.
There's got to be
all
like
the time.
a scale of impulse control scale, whether it's 0 or 100.
Because
right?
a normal
that
person
scale
who's
is based on your
currently
executive.
anxious.
The power of your executive function is to look at that impulse.
So imagine a person, a quote unquote normal person, who is anxiety has been like through the roof. That could correspond very well to the kind of lack of impulse control that we're discussing. So in hindsight, that could also mean that ADHD might actually be a form of persistent anxiety overarching the decision-making process. So that there isn't, quote-unquote, a normalcy to speak of. There is just a gradient of anxiety under which everybody's operating. And that anxiety could actually be heightened and lowered in different contexts.
Comment would be like, that anxiety is probably reflective of the amount of executive function in control or available over impulses.
Sure, it could be very, very correlated. Not caused, but correlated.
If you don't have a lot of control over what's about to happen next,
you might be anxious about it.
You just know that forever it's always up in the air.
Yeah, and you might be anxious about it, or you might recognize that and use that to lessen the anxiety.
Mm. That kind of points towards complexity of
I get it.
figuring out
here, fellas.
what's the true cause, where did it come from, where it at. Dill, man, so good to have you by.
Yes, sir.
Every time I hear Dylan, I always think of Barlow.
Big D. This is Big D.
Well, no, it has to do. It has to do because I worked here before any of you guys were hired, and Noah and Dylan were just Barlow's kids.
Hey, bro.
Yeah, buddy. And with that, we'll take a short break. Okay, what?
Much like in the holonic model,
Right.
the model is the focal point, despite the fact that everything is about the concrete being represented in the archetypical and vice versa. It's like a middleman between the two situations. So everything is archetypical, everything is concrete. The model binds the two. The same way,
The abstract.
the same way the autonomous nervous system in the
Yeah,
software
autonomous does the same.
it
Connecting
is
between
actually
the
a
central and the tactile.
Notice how all the conversations I've been having about this can't revolve coming back around to it. So you go out into your sensory stuff, collect stuff, becomes autonomous. You go out into your conceptual stuff, whatever, that feeds back into the autonomous. Everything comes back into the autonomous and feeds it back and modifies it step by step by step by
Yeah.
step, evolving it into the next phase.
Kind of, I imagine it seems to be showing within the autonomous layer two subtypes of autonomous entry data.
Representation on the concrete, representation on the extreme
Correct.
abstract, the archetypical. So the X state stuff, where you have your actor model,
Right, yeah,
is
yeah.
all that archetypical stuff. But it's fluff.
This
it
was
appears
cool.
and disappears.
Last meeting, we really got into that X
Yeah.
state stuff and like the stack, and I feel like I don't know much about programming or
You know this.
stacks
You
and all
know
this,
you know the
but
things you need
I
to.
I know enough to appreciate the different like environments that are possible out there, and like that we've been able to find a lot of work that's already been done.
Mhm.
That's what I like about what I've been seeing about the stack you have put together.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, like you feel it's complete-ish at this point, right?
Yeah, you'll notice I've been jumping around things like which router to use. I have been.
So we have a techno stack that does what we want it to do, even though some parts could be better or whatever.
Yeah,
It's
like
just
the
to get it
idea.
done.
We might not.
We only
have the
took
current
projects.
brand yet.
We only took and used projects that can do their piece.
Right.
And
And
try
then
to hobble
in the
them
very
together.
niche that we need it to.
Right.
Like that's been the other thing. Like,
That's the constraint. It's not about is this philosophically a great project
Yeah.
or is it beautiful or whatever.
Some
It's the question is, does it work within this paradigm?
So some projects were actually removed from the possibility of being used because they overstepped their boundaries. So they would try to tackle a problem
Yeah.
that we have,
And not allow you
but
to
not-
isolate
but
their
not in-
assumptions
but
out.
not in the way that we would want. So yes, not what you were just
Yeah.
about to say. Actually, sorry for cutting you off.
No, I just added it right there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely exactly like that.
Like it's nice if they want to expand into greater territories, but allow the programmer, the developer, to shut off your attempt there and just
Do it the
stick
way
with
they
your
want to.
layer. Like allow
Yeah.
the dev to access just that layer that you're good for.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I've chosen the pieces of frameworks rather than the frameworks themselves is because those pieces fulfill my requirements, whereas the framework itself oversteps its
Probably in most
the
cases.
boundaries that I needed
Yep.
to.
Especially and probably every time philosophical boundaries.
Yeah, which is why like instead of using an actual framework, I'm using a framework for frameworks called Vite. You've seen or Vite.
Nope.
Do you recall I mentioned Webpack?
Like for Java.
Yeah, it's an alternative web packer. What it takes is like so you've used JavaScript in the browser, right? And in the browser, you reference your JavaScript file in a tag, and it does the rest for you, right?
Sure.
But when you're programming with JavaScript itself, you want to do things like import some code from this piece, import some code from that piece, put it all together.
You want to be able to drag in all kinds of libraries to create an entire platform without spelling it out right in the web page.
Right. And what the packer will do is it'll read all of the files that you do want to use and compile for you the overarching JavaScript file that the browser is going to load from that point on. So it's a compiler, right?
Sure.
So it's like using
Okay.
it's like using C, it's like using C++.
It's meant for the browser client interface
Yeah.
over web.
So when you're programming the precompiled version. The browser is executing the compiled version of that code, and it's doing it in real time, so
Right.
you don't give a shit. It just keeps compiling for you. So that's why it doesn't matter. Vite, like Webpack, takes those
I don't
import.
really know what you mean by compiling for you. At what time?
So
At runtime? At request time?
Yeah, when you're developing, it's at request time.
No, but I mean at user time.
If it depends on where the app is running. If the app is running in development mode, so the programmer is interested in it, it will run the compilation process on the fly as soon as you save your file.
Because you're just changing one
Yeah.
variable or something.
So you want to change something, you want to see it on the screen right away, it does it. So that's the development environment. When you
So
when
obviously
you do a
user,
production environment,
you wouldn't want to have to compile every time
no,
translate. So you're creating chunks.
you'll precompile everything, and you'll create the chunks, and the browser will be responsible for bringing in the initial chunk and loading up anything else it needs to keep running, just like a real program with dependencies on the operating system.
Mm-hmm. Good. So, and the kind of goal of this in general speaking would be to have a program development environment within the web browser framework.
Yeah.
Whatever a web browser can give you.
Yeah. So the tools I've used is already doing what I've described. So you already get like the whole, you save your file in development mode and your page refreshes automatically for free, like immediately. See, so as soon as you make a change, you see what the result of that change is. So you're not like you don't have a.
So I feel like
you don't have a delay.
You're expressing parts of the developer experience.
Yes, exactly.
Right now, okay. I like that because I like to make quick changes in code and then see what the exact happening is, like almost in real time. That's
what it's
from
for.
my limited experience. That's one thing I like.
Yeah, so you don't even have to hit,
match that as close as possible.
So check this out. You don't even have to hit the refresh button on your browser.
Right.
It will automatically say, "Oh, I picked up that there's a change on the server." Pull the change in, integrate it into the JavaScript modules, and now your code now operates exactly as you expect it to. Sometimes it doesn't, and then you do a full refresh just in case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially when the server restarts.
Yep. It's all you.
It's all nothing. So yeah, that's one of the criteria for the developer experience that I've been definitely on about. Then the latter packages will actually allow us to do the so like take Refine for example. Refine is a front end package. What it's supposed to be really really good at is hold on to the information state it had from the server and change your user interface accordingly. If necessary, go back to the server, refresh your assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But don't do that unless you have to.
So
It's not going to touch the server unless it really, really has to.
What I'm hearing is that
And that's the tactile part.
if it has to, the channels are available. What the protocols that you're talking about, these different packages, are providing something that allows the system to happen naturally as an emulation
Yeah.
of nature.
So you've heard of caching. So if you cache the data from the server until the time that it's changed, you can assume that if you were to
Right.
go back to the server, you'll
And
just get the
so
same response. So you just shortcut
Here's an
that.
example with that. If you're displaying something that depends on a chunk of the database, and you've got it locally calculated, you can send a request to the server. What's your latest MD5 sum of this chunk of the database or something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's this one. That's the same version.
It's me. I
And
don't have to
execute,
update
right?
anything.
So at minimum, that you're always sending out that kind of like tiny feeler, like
Yeah.
which happens so instantly on the network.
So one of the things that it does is, for example, in the tactile sense, not every input makes it back to the back end, so to speak. So if you're touching this, right, the signal that the signal your spine is getting might not necessarily be the new nerve impulse every single time. It might be just like the stored version, just saying, oh yeah, this is still happening. It doesn't say what's still happening. It just has an idea of saying that thing is still happening. So you remove a huge chunk of transfer of information by just shortcutting it. You send it once with an identifier, and then say identifier.
It's
still
like
occurring.
something that locally makes sense. It
Yeah,
seems
for
like,
that frame of time, for that
like,
context.
without over encoding the grandiose meaning of what this sensory input is. You just
and overloading the system the sensory system entirely. Because that's the difference between drooling over the blades of grass and looking at them. Right? Like this situation of like doing it once and then just saying, okay, it's still happening. That allows for the information channels to remain relatively fucking empty. Which means they're not preoccupied for reprocessing the same damn information over and over and over.
It's like every layer to itself, the most efficient expression of what it can do would be ideal, and you don't add noise at
If you
every
don't have to.
opportunity.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You don't you that's the coherence system itself. Like, as time goes on, what's coherent is what's relevant to the noise. Well, like what noise you want to receive versus the kind of you don't want to. So you get to eliminate more and more noise. Of course, as you start out, you're a babe, and it's everything. And what do babies do? Literally everything. Because their impulses are all over the place. And they have no overarching any executive function over it. Other than keep feeling it out.
Right. By flooding the abstract, the automations, with all kinds of different chunks of potentially viable things, and keep sorting through and eliminating some.
Eventually you get to the toddler, eventually you
man.
get to the child, eventually you get to the teenager, and so it goes.
Kind of glad I'm not there right now. that sucked.
It would have been a very it would have been a very great experience to watch as well, because I'm hugely influenced by it myself.
Well, aren't we all?
Well, you haven't had the same proximity to it. I'm not saying, hey, you can't imagine what it's like to have a child because you've never had children. But at the same time, too, there are elements of child rearing that might escape you because you've just never been in that spot. And it's like hard to articulate because it's
Well,
nuanced.
for one, the amount of time, like the sheer hours spent
the sleeplessness.
looking at that face screaming or crying at you. Right.
Its demands
the
very
first couple
evident.
of years and all that, yeah. Yeah, no, there's the sheer volume of experience. That's what I'm.
Yeah,
but
it's a
I've
flood.
had my own quality experience, of course, as we all have. But
Yeah,
the sheer volume.
yeah, the experience of being completely overwhelmed by it and having nowhere to actually go after the fact. Either.
Right.
Like you can't hand them off to anybody.
That's a pretty tough
Which is actually a symptom of the
nightmare
of the system.
the market.
Yeah,
The market
it's-
system.
especially when like your own parents are of the market and they're like, nah, I don't
What do
feel
you
like
think
it.
of the term market system and gift system?
That's fine. System
It sounds
system itself
sounds
is
creepy,
not,
doesn't it?
A little bit, but it's
The gift system.
It's the same as like with sex. There's the model and system of sex. There is the model, the body, but then there's the system, the desire, the system, the mechanics of it. There's system in everything that's model. There's model in everything that's system.
Right.
It's not a bad word. It's
Kind of
just
like a flip side.
it's just like the system, the capital T.
But that's kind of my
S.
point. Is it's like a flip side that can be applied to either side of things. There is such exist.
Sex is systemic. Like you literally have
So,
to have a system
I think
of interaction to do sex.
One of our
So I mean, but it's
maybe
pure model.
takes on like a word such as system, which sounds evil, is that it's so much like yin and yang, male and female. Like it's practically like the male to the model's female.
Order
right?
chaos.
So that's a very different.
Remember,
sort of take.
all sex is gay sex for a reason. It's not just a fun thing to say, or a way to say anything
Right.
in particular whatsoever. It just it just removes the notion of what the man and the woman is from any kind of societal role that I might have outside of the specific mythology regarding the order and the chaos interaction.
Right. It's linking to the metaphor to order and chaos, as kind of that's your root.
Yeah, like and if the male and female version of it is too much, we have the seed and ground metaphor, which is saying the exact same thing. The entire potential of the ground is being channeled through the seed and expressed by whatever the resultant plant is. In the same way, the seed and the womb
The concrete
will
emergence out of
arise
the
into
abstract.
one more human being. It's got nothing to do with whether you got a pussy or a dick. Right? It's like they both serve the exact same purpose in this scenario. I was actually thinking about that earlier, about how I would approach the subject on a talk show or something. Because a lot of these systems are charged with sexism for a very good reason. Like by stating that women are chaotic and men are the order. That gives
What a
it
great take.
That gives it a sexist connotation, like.
Right.
Obviously.
That's to reify again. That's a problem of ideological reification.
That's what's called pseudo-gender.
Right. Like a pillar of the stacking of egos. Ego stacking. Right. That's what we talk about. The market produces these ego stacks.
The purpose of our mythology here is to just paint a picture of the potential womb being seeded with essentially what would become sperm, and out of that combination, right, like the unformulated, seeded, and formulated out of, like, grabbing all of the resources out of the chaos and ordering them together. That's the metaphor, but it's got nothing to do with what a woman is or what a man is.
Right. Yeah.
They're all participants in the exact same scenario, so it's like
the metaphor is useful for understanding.
It's got
but
nothing,
then if
to
you
do with,
extend that into, oh well, now I'm going to identify this person as that and this. Like,
yeah,
it's not meant to be taken to reify.
It has nothing to do with sexual orientation, because in this mythology landscape, this is about like the womb being seeded with the potential, and
well, just like the mind body
right
disconnect, like between like the relationship between
here's
the heaven and the earth, etc.
Here's how to understand it in a monogendered sense. By that I mean, like, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man or anything to that effect, in that the body is that womb, the mind is that seed. Together they create the trajectory of the motion of the ocean, if you will,
So
for yourself.
so interesting that
So we're all men and
men
women in
men
that
actually
sense.
have bodies, and females actually have minds. That's interesting to note. Could you believe that a female would have a mind, or that a man would have a body? Crazy to imagine, isn't it?
That works as a specific kind of metaphor,
Right.
and from the projection of
Very popular metaphor.
if you were to imagine the mind as the womb and the seed as an actual event, then in
That'd be a total flipping.
Yeah, then in that sense, all the resources that will feed the seed into the creation can be totally inverted. And yeah, this again speaks to, like, it's not talking about whether you have a penis or a vagina or some combination thereof. It's regardless of that. Stepping back
Right.
a little bit. Stepping back a
Can
little
we
bit.
step back to our archetypes of order and chaos? And
Yeah. Like let's put it this way.
how on the top side is kind of like more mental towards
So the
thinking.
body is the womb. The mind is the seed. So that's the
Yeah, I think you said it opposite just a couple minutes ago, but yeah.
No, I
yeah,
didn't.
follow.
I didn't. And you said it
Body,
the opposite.
womb, mind, seed.
But you said
Sure.
it the opposite, and I said yes. This was also a legitimate
Right.
trajectory to
So-
take it in.
It
So
is
it
it is and
switches.
was.
It switches.
That's actually by design. It's a feature, not a bug.
Right, and that comes back to our diagram for order and chaos, since time immemorial, with the twig. That order, in the systemic sense, sees the twig separated out
Mhm.
into its own components
So the
and
body and the mind.
systematized. But chaos, to it, is it combined into whatever its original form is. that
Body
it
and
cannot
mind,
dissect.
masculine, feminine, chaos, feminine,
Chaos,
order, masculine.
chaos, feminine. But again, this is it's so important to note that none of this pertains to men and women in the concrete sense. This
Right.
is a mythology.
I just got a flashback. Like we've been
It's
over
just a-
this.
oh, yeah.
Probably like
We had this we have an
episode
entire episode for it.
42 or something, 51. I don't know.
It's still an important subject to note because, again, it's so easy to take the idea that chaos being feminine is a statement about women in the concrete sense.
And to be
It's
like,
not.
oh, there's a woman now. Oh, she's so chaotic. That's
No.
why you're like that.
There's women, and then there's an archetype woman. There's men, then there's archetype man.
Right.
And the idea behind putting chaos and order into those places is more related to what you would think of in terms of plants. Again, earth, seed. The outcome, the plant that comes out of the seed, is the combination
kind of-
of the earth feeding into that
The
seed.
the
and
metaphor,
coming
like
out
the
of it.
seed being an abstract idea of just like this tiny pinch of grain that you
Right.
can't even see.
And the body
But
is the
meanwhile,
executor.
the entire earth is there, ready to like react to that
Exactly.
process.
Exactly. Bootstrap. It's a bootstrap process. What we're looking at is bootstrap
Right.
because the
And so
plant
the,
is
so the male
bootstrapping.
as that seed and the female as that
Earth.
existing to unfold the seed, without which it's simply a speck, like a speck of dust.
Just another component of the earth
Yeah,
remaining
hardly
in chaos.
hardly different.
Mhm.
without that.
So the idea isn't just to segregate a woman versus man, but to note that the body is man and woman.
Right, and this
With
is the
with
the
the
gay
woman-
sex joke
That yeah.
coming up, because we all have minds and we all have bodies,
Right. And it's the minds that engage in the horniness.
right, which is pretty gay.
Both of which are the male counterparts to the
Right.
body, regardless of who it is.
Just like having, there's an agreement and all that,
Yeah, so all sex is gay. Because because if you take the mind out of the picture, in both cases, then you just have two female, and it's
Just
still
bodies.
and it's still gay. Like in the colloquial sense, not the.
Like a couple of jellyfish rubbing against each
Yeah,
other.
yeah, like. But again, like this isn't to say women are chaotic or men are
Yeah, right.
ordered. It's
So
to
that-
say that they're both things at every given point, and lo and behold, we have much more of chaotic men than we do ordered ones. What that is speaking to is not that again women are taking over or something stupid like that. It's speaking to the fact that a component of the yin yang is lacking. The ordered piece isn't affecting the
Sure.
chaotic piece.
And I was
in
just
a
kind of
balanced
thinking,
manner.
like, economically, there's a lot of pressure, like, just to exist in our abstract states, right? So it's hard to feel whole when you can barely afford.
But that's
things.
installing the chaotic into into its inappropriate layer, into the ordered layer, just fucking
Yeah,
it
that's-
up.
right?
And now you do have a situation where both men and women are fucked in the head. Myself included. This isn't.
Yeah.
This isn't.
It's shaped by the market, but we also have our own sort of philosophies, as everybody does, right? And can see a kind of higher good potential in how we can connect with people and what's possible.
Well, check this out. Here's the irony of the situation. In this spring to go towards order as being the idealistic sense, the patriarchy, the maleness,
It's
the
forgotten to keep sensing where it came from,
that men are best.
how it existed.
Check this out. We have a situation where most of the men in the elite sphere
Right?
are pussies. I don't mean that in this again sexualized
Like
sense. Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk, my favorite, Ben Shapiro, any one of those manly men people,
Yeah, very.
they are so chaotic, so fragmented, so unhinged, weak, have no capacity for
Unbased.
for
I think what
their
you're
own
getting to
self-defense.
is
they
unbased
are
in
the
ideology.
women. They are the kind of women that they are describing women to be. They are projecting themselves
Fine.
onto whatever the sexist notion of women that they have. There literally are those things that they're talking about. Take that, motherfuckers.
Right. And things which couldn't exist without a proper feedback methodology, if you will. Want to call it that.
By the way, I called you all pussies.
Except for you.
All of you.
Except for you. You're cool because you're watching.
No, I named the names. Look, they are describing women in a way that they are projecting themselves to be. They are the insecure creatures that they
isn't it
project
always-
women to be.
Probably like that, where
yeah,
behaviors can be basically dissected.
It's the same mantra you've heard in school. They're only doing this to you because they fear the exact same thing
It's
for
almost
themselves.
it's almost back to that impulse control issue of taking executive function at the moment of impulse and saying, okay, step back. What's the role here? How does this all work out?
Combine this with the idea of meditation. Combine this with the idea of maturity. What do you get? And there's a picture. Impulse control, stepping back, not relying on it, figuring out what the automated part should really be,
Spinning up,
and embedding
spinning
that
up
back.
executive function. Basically.
Right.
That's where it
but
starts.
also embedding that executive function back into the automation, into the
Of course. But that can never happen if it's not the step back protocol.
And the end goal, if you will, is so that it stops flaring up,
Keep happening again with bad results.
so that your automation system is capable of actually
Adapting.
not moving to that extreme anymore.
Mhm.
and just like this is a situation that
Right.
has been encountered these ways before, sure, let's
This
step
is like,
back. Let's step back for the context,
and-
but at the same time, not respond to the stimuli.
Automation is the canvas for this at every layer. Every
But
layer
it itself-
has used this canvas.
But it itself is responsive, so it's autopilot all the way through. So what does the maturation
Right.
look like is feeding that autopilot correct information off of which to move off of. The very thing that is stunted by the system. Responsibility, basically.
Can
That's
you
what that is.
say that again? Just recap that sentence.
Maturation involves going and flaring into your cognizant mindset, assessing what your impulses are
As an
and-
observer. So
and
observing,
as a
you're saying.
it's almost like being two people at once, the person that is there, the person that is observing, being yourself there. Just to take that step back and ensure that the habits that happen to the person that is there are guided by the person that is observing what is happening. Twofold instead of automated response.
And guided how? With what database?
Observation, memory, presence. Because those things cannot be installed for you externally.
It feels like you kind of raised up like a dichotomy between the concrete experience and the central processing of
So-
that, with automation in the middle, kind of taking something from both sides.
So check it out. Let's step back to a stove hot. Just I like that example. It's simple. It's everybody can relate to touching something hot and just jumping off of it like that.
I never have.
I have.
They told me it was bad when it happens.
They told me it was bad, and I had to see for myself.
No, I'm kidding. But it's possible that stance could exist.
So my thing is that the first time you ever do this, your spine, for example, will not know to just jerk away from the thing before your mind.
But there is some
Tells it
built-in stuff that can cause like a
Sure, I'm
specific
I am
muscle
simplifying.
memory, like clam up, shell up.
For
kind
the
of.
sake of this, this is a pseudoscientific explanation.
Okay.
It's probably more nuanced in a real scientific sense. But like, let's start with the whole blank slate idea of a neurological system. You don't know
Well,
what pain is. You don't know what hot is. You don't know
As
any
a
of
baby,
those things.
you put your hand on a stove and it just starts melting, and you're sitting there. But you don't learn till 10 years later
Oh,
that
that-
was actually bad for you to do.
That actually happens in different ways. Check this out. Sometimes babies will do something like bite themselves, not realizing what function is doing this. And so they will bite harder due to the pain,
Shit.
right?
To
And
make
so,
it stop getting angry,
yeah.
like
and
having a self-trauma based on the limb mobility.
so the cycle
into the
isn't
mouth.
quite configured yet, if you will.
Mhm.
It's there, it's just not okay.
So, in other words,
So-
babies need to be watched and taken care of from the moment of birth.
human
almost
human babies
Not
specifically, but
left
yeah.
alone at all.
Human babies in particular, yeah, they're slower on that front. Other
Mhm.
babies walk minutes after birth, so there's a
Right.
difference.
Even like horses,
Giraffes,
which
elephants,
seems crazy.
giraffes, elephants spend 2 years in the womb.
Damn.
Anyway, that's not important. But getting back to like arranging all of these things together and why the central autonomous system becomes so much more important, you have all these flashes out into the textile world.
Yeah.
Pain, pleasure,
it's
heat,
about,
cold, whatever.
a very dynamic system.
It sends all of that all of those representations back into the mental world, and it's like, for me, give me a picture of that. What's cold? What's hard? What's green? What's
But I'm
red? What's this? What's that?
what I'm thinking of
And then
is
eventually that materializes.
we have so many experiences of, okay, there's this object, like a red hot thing, like an element. Let's say it red hot. Let's say that's your eyeballs are looking at something crazy red hot, and then boom, tss, and it's like and that's a crazy memory. So every time you see something glowing red hot, in your memory, ideally should be triggered like how much pain just came right after that because you didn't know what it was. You were crawling. And
right
now every other time you see red hot, it's like comes up as this visceral like experience.
So, yes, and this visceral experience is what I'm trying to get at, is you've already went through the motion of the ocean of processing it in the high levels back when it happened. That information then got reintegrated.
That just came along with it.
That information also got reintegrated back into whether this red move away must be automatic because it's so dangerous or whatever.
Yeah. No, you're right.
This information is going to be
was
dangerous.
There was
so
no previous experience.
That
you're talking about the fact that the pain in the senses cause a recoiling activity, which is built into the nervous system. Not even like memory, not even like cognition. It's
right.
You've already started recoiling before you processed even objects or anything.
So the first recoil required,
but the objects come along. It all
process.
comes along though.
So the fact that you recoiled got combined together with seeing the red, got combined together with putting the hand there.
It all happened together.
Right. And so what gets fed back into the muscle memory is that as soon as red is seen,
in that intensity,
these are the correct responses.
You completely remember what happened.
Those will be the responses to be prepped for.
Get ready to get hot and recoil.
This is why sometimes when you see something, your autopilot system begins to activate regardless of whether you want it to or not. So like you are in a situation where things
but it's kind of helpful though, right?
Right.
It's
prep work. It's prep work.
You're opening the stove and now you're reaching in. You better be ready if you feel something on your forearm.
But then
like to recoil.
But then this is where maturation comes into play. Is this appropriate for this context? Is everything about this context the same as it was before? And if you're not able to use that feedback, you're stuck.
Right.
You're stuck on a loop responding to things that don't happen.
Right. Especially for like a trauma that happened with a specific person.
Yeah.
Who is not
trauma
there,
is like
not there anymore, but still you're having this sense of defensive senses coming up to you.
Yeah. Comes up like strong when when it's like a repetition of the past, but it's like with a completely different person. So like for me personally,
you're right. I feel it is break time.
Yeah, you can pause it.
Let's pause and we'll be right back.
Pattern comes up everywhere. That's why I recognize it. I am that pattern. Like
I am the pattern.
and I don't mean that like in that sense. I just
No, it's good to be that pattern.
my mindset is there.
Yep. I was just talking about creating a jig.
For creating jigs, basically, right?
Instead of cutting out the part itself as it is, I create a tool to be later used to do something else.
To create a part.
Sometimes. It's a meta sort of thing.
Yeah. So I think we were touching on a really, really strong notes on how there's an isomorphism between the software that we're trying to develop and the biological system that we're trying to develop it for.
Yeah.
In
Right.
particular, the whole notion of there being an archetype being the only thing describable, the guild being the only thing that's tangible,
Right.
and the model is like using this is the core element that guides both components together, which to it are essentially ephemeral. Look,
Right.
archetypes come and go.
And the model being
concreteness
like
comes and goes.
practically a soup of protocols.
Yes, constraints in particular.
Just a soup.
An evolving one. It's not a
Right.
static soup.
Right. It's a very beautiful soup.
Right.
It tastes delicious.
Its
etc.
staticness can be considered to be what the archetype is to be representing, but there is no one variant of it that is it specifically. There's just this one, that one, the other one.
Right.
So that's like an important compositional element. And this touches back on the notion of like the roles of the different state management systems that we have in our dashboard. The tactile one, the autonomous, and the central. The tactile becoming ephemeral, the central becoming ephemeral, and the autonomous one becoming the dumb but the more overarching thing that everything else is reliant upon. To
Sort of
be
like
ephemeral.
a concrete thing existing.
Yeah, serving the exact same.
Because we're talking
role.
media again.
Yeah,
I'll
and
bring
it-
up the term media.
And it serves the same role that the APS serves for bringing together the memes together with the objects.
The NCOS.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So those are like the main parallels there.
I feel like this has been
And it's great that we can have like an isomorphism with the body, like the fingertips being the tactile, the
Sure, as a metaphor.
the nerve cords.
as a metaphor, fine.
Yeah, the nerve cords running through your arm back to your spine, and the spine itself being part of the whole autonomous system, the thing that figures out what the hell you just touched, right? And then the central nervous
Right.
system taking that information and creating
So,
a simulation.
It seems pretty obvious when you've encountered it enough, I guess, that this is just a way of speaking, a language that at every layer is sort of the same but different in its own way, and that always incorporates a seeming complete abstraction with the it's concrete. At every layer, we're having the same thing happen, describable in the same way.
Isomorphism. You get a representation of each layer in each layer. Would be another way to
Mhm.
say it. Which makes it a
I
strange
forget
loop.
where I was reminiscing towards. There's
It
something.
had strange loopy vibes to it, that's
Mhm.
for sure. But the great part about the isomorphism is that we can have a concrete one in this case, because with our guild dynamics, we have computation, and then we have neurological computation. What did I call it? Synthetic neurological computation.
Mm-hmm.
Which is basically what the dashboard software, the raw material of the dashboard software is. So not just having the capacity for computing, but the conversation engine, the broadcast engine, the workshop engine, and the automation engine, all built as a computational unit. So at that point, it's not sentient machine, but it's got the full platform of becoming able to be one. And then when you feed the guild dynamics information into it, so you make all of those dashboards about the fundamental guilds, and through the fundamental guilds, the specific
Right.
membership,
and this is coming
mediation.
back to where the whole articulation would begin to build up to that point.
Right. So you're taking the lower layers out of which it got built,
Mm-hmm. And refocus back on that.
Yeah,
right.
put it right back
And
on
have
the top,
this
and it goes back down.
spectrum of kind of abstract to concrete.
Well, it's literally completing the loop, because at that point, the guild system is the thing that brought us up to the computational level, and then the computational level is now being imbued with the guild system, and that imbuing, that third layer of making it work, is what gives it the quote unquote sentience. And the point of saying it's sentient is that it gains the kind of isomorphism that it has with the biological counterpart. At that point, this is about the guild system as it brought it up, and this is about the guild system as what it is about. So each is a counterpoint to the other.
Right. I feel like you're saying that both stacks have been articulated well enough to be able to just come to a point to declare equivalency, and within that framework,
Or
that kind of
sufficient
allows,
equivalency.
that allows the
I think that's what isomorphism
the
is.
platform, if you will, on top of which new conclusions and new ideas.
Yeah, so guilds built in this system and guilds built in that system now go in tandem. Right? Not necessarily similarly, but in tandem, in that they're both feeding off each other.
Well,
They're both
this
guided
is
by the same underlying
The entire
DNA.
point is that connection, that tandemness, because you want what's, quote, actually happening in your life to reflect what's in your cell phone device, whatever,
Being described as happening.
telling you what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Good old geotabs.
And that's the bridge.
And that's how we get geotabs, through the dashboard.
So it seems like, and that seems pretty kind of revolutionary, if you will, or like impactful, big. The fact that we have a description of the biological organization of the organism to a point of APS and all that, and a technological organization to a significant degree that it can be said equivalent or whatever, like to a sufficient complexity in description that you have almost like the isomorphism to make an assumption and create something more, a platform above that, which is like the guild, the dashboard, to marry together the life and the technology.
Yeah. Did you notice that you use the word revolutionary here, and it's
I did try to intentionally.
and it's kind of
I
almost,
wanted to
and it's a funny sad word.
add that.
Do you notice that it's a funny sad word?
Well, the
Beca-
definition is to go about the path of a circle. The very definition
Sure.
itself.
Okay. Well, that's not what I was getting at.
You just end up where you started.
My point was that considering this something as revolutionary, in the more colloquial sense, like
Steve
out
Jobs.
out of this world.
It's like iPhone 16, like you never even could imagine.
Do you not get the sense that even like speaking that way paints a bleaker picture than the one that could be?
You're talking about triggering and all that. Yeah. I
So,
remember
like,
in the moment, I wanted to.
How is this even? How did we get to a point where this is what is revolutionary for us? Because imagine in that perfect
Which
world,
seems crazy.
the tribal world that we're juxtaposing upon this, these things
We're
would
so
never
far
come
gone.
up. They would never come up. Those will never be considerations for solving problems. The problems we are.
Are you talking about
tasked
like a
with-
physical like revolution, like chop the heads off of the monarch or whatever?
More the abstract of like, wow, this is such a new
Just-
way of thinking.
There has to be a total paradigm shift, right?
Right.
So if you switch back to tribal civ,
This would
civ,
never be a paradigm shift. It would be like the
It's more of
the obvious momentum of
or
the
an obvious
motion.
a deviation in some way, clearly
Yeah.
seen
So
by the elders who were old and not cool, so the youth didn't listen to them.
what I'm saying is basically like the fact that this is sounding at all, quote unquote, world changing in any capacity
To throw that
is
around,
fucking
revolution.
sad. It's literally sad. It's not.
It's a good comment.
It's not a. It's not like a point of celebration of like, oh look at we've created this new system.
No, you're
That's not it.
you're
It's-
noticing
It's
how- how bad it is.
just like wow.
That even that statement should need to be made. The idea of it.
Like, dude, what are we doing? It should not be revolutionary. It should not. It should be obvious. Like, it should be the kind of care that we are expounding upon is familial. And
Right.
all we're saying is
Expand
extend it
that. Extend.
further beyond the family to all of your
And
associations.
to give a model of what the gift sort of economy.
And I
the
mean,
gift
this is
system
where we
like.
can get preachy. Like,
Well,
in that sense.
it's a tough entry point. Some people will be able to just run the scenario through their head, like, oh well, I would feed my kid, so what if I would, just always if I had food and someone needed it, what if I just always gave it? Or whatever,
And,
just
then,
as
and then
a-
you have like, but what if you have that one nasty little individual that takes all your food away from you?
and robs you.
Well, holy
Right.
fuck!
Well,
As if anybody else
That is
around you
true.
behaved the exact same
is
fucking
true, though.
way, would you really be out of food?
We all have to be protective of ourselves and defensive in cases where we're meeting somebody
No, but think
completely
about it.
unknown.
But think
Think
about
about
those
that.
actors.
It's
Yes,
totally true,
it's true.
right? Defend yourself. Watch
It's true.
for your family.
But those
and-
actors are farther and smaller. For one, the motivation to
farther
behave.
and smaller. What?
Those actors are farther and smaller in instances. In this situation that I'm describing,
Yeah,
nobody.
you're talking about
almost
like the
nobody's going without.
0.01% of.
Yeah, almost
whatever.
nobody's going without. So the motivation to do any of those things.
But it also depends on where you are.
diminishes.
So you can't say
Yes.
that as a blanket statement.
No, it's not.
If you're walking through certain towns,
Averages. This
certain
is an
neighborhoods,
average. So take it with a grain of salt that it needs to.
and we've now expanded out into not an average,
In-
but every place has their own economy, their own problems,
Okay.
and their own percentages of
May I?
danger.
May I?
So you wouldn't just go out to certain places.
Not
'cause
just.
you'll
No,
get stuck.
that's not what I'm saying.
You'd be dead.
It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in the inverse scenario, where people already don't go without to begin with, the motivation to
Right.
do such things diminishes.
Where community, I guess maybe this is like true community,
Right.
is really stepping up to demand.
Right.
Because what people are demanding, if it's supplied, there's not going to be that case.
Right, because
Right.
less people will need to
And
facilitate.
it sucks that it's on the city, quote unquote, to
So,
do that rather than people.
Hold on, I'm
In
not-
fact,
just
it's become illegal in our city to actually try to help people like that.
so before we get there, let me just finish the arc of my thought. So not only does the criminal intent, so to speak, diminishes, there's less reason for it. If it were to happen in the off case that it does, because this community already steps up to the thing. So whatever's been
It's
so
a
whatever's
sign.
been stolen,
It's a
whatever's
sign
been
by the community. It's a sign taken by the community that somebody is in need, extreme need, when something like that happens.
Sure.
And needs to be has his whole life taken
but say it's
care
a,
of.
but
Or
say it's an outsider and they steal something from that they get robbed. Somebody gets
assessed.
robbed. Even in that situation, the impact is lessened. That was my whole point, because the rest of the community now
Oh,
under
you're talking. Yeah. So you're talking about like the damage that was done. The community would receive that as a signal, a demand basically. Like, I don't know what happened. I need help. Security, like community members, like
Replacement
what does
of
it mean
items.
that somebody stole?
and replacement of items, whatever.
Right. So,
So not only-
it's not that's an insurance.
So not only is the
It's
motive
nothing to that community to be able to respond to that
Yeah.
demand with ample supply.
so there's a twofold
That-
impact.
Just because somebody was able to eat or something, even they had to steal it, that's kind of a noble theft because their body demanded it.
Yeah.
How
So-
can you like sanction that person?
But the real thing I'm getting at is a two-pronged impact that this has. On the first front, there's less need to do the crime, right? Since
Well,
everything is supplied.
it's all a circular.
So the motivation to actually fulfill the crime. But if the crime gets done, the impact
Anyways.
of the crime is also diminished. I'm not talking about like extreme scenarios of murder and all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
That's like a different category of infraction.
Right.
But like on the simple cases of like theft and all of those things, on the one hand side you have a diminished need for it to happen, so that goes away to some extent, and then the impact of it when it does happen also
Right.
diminishes in a much more
Because it sort of triggers
satisfying capacity.
It triggers a demand, not only to the victim, who had something stolen, let's say.
But the impact of the community where things got stolen from.
Yeah. It creates a demand, like the let's say the one who perpetrated, sort of pegs a demand on part of the community, takes something.
Yeah, and
but
so-
ideally that demand gets advertised, if you will, and many people know about it. Like that's the system we're talking about. Dashboard
So,
essentially is this
yeah.
economy of demand and supply.
So the first part,
in any facet.
so the first part speaks to the fact that if in fact it did end up happening, there is like a lack already. Right? It's more like a feedback observation method of the situation. Why is somebody? We're assuming
No,
it's not a psychopathic.
We have to be beyond that.
We're not
because
talking about psychopaths. We're not talking about like.
We're talking about somebody stole something, but now they're gone. We don't know. We can't contact them anymore.
How did-
Obviously,
Well, no. Well, why did this individual resort to stealing? Also, that's worth mentioning. What was the circumstance? What was the setup that devolved into this? And again, we're assuming non-psychopathic individual, non-sociopathic.
no. I get it if you quote unquote catch the person, and you're like trying to like put them through the system. but most of the time you won't know any of that shit. So that's like just systemic thinking on top of
I'm
it.
not talking about catching the person, actually. I'm talking about why would somebody be motivated to steal? Why would
Okay.
somebody be motivated to steal
So-
a loaf of bread? Hungry.
You must
Obviously.
be talking about like the thought process of the mind of the state, who wished to have feedback onto its tactile senses of this happened, that happened, that someone stole this, someone stole that. The state feels this in.
If we assume that the state is the model state in which it's trying to just basically
Then it would ask that
gather
question.
demand. Yes.
However, it's not. But yes, that's what
That
it
would
should
be-
be asking that question.
That would be the extension of my thinking process, of
Mhm.
course, because that's the thinking process.
Beautiful. Yep.
That's how you get demands to be real time. That's what's gonna give you the demands. Look, the fact that somebody,
Sensing demands,
So-
for one. If you're not even sensing demands.
if you have like a quote unquote a perfect setup and somebody steals in it, something is not perfect about the fucking setup. Given
Right.
if we assume that the person doing the action is not using a different
This idea of a
mentality.
setup. This
environment. I'm talking
Environment, yes.
about environment.
now, I will put forward a tough thought. One is shelter. The idea of having a wall, if you will, quote unquote, like a cell membrane, an inside and an outside.
It's
And
not
what
controversial.
happens in an environment where units, let's say chaotic units, don't adhere to some shared mythology or something, and it is let's say importing to your community.
So immunity is weak.
Weak immunity. What's proper immunity? Like, is there like an education for new cells coming in? They have to be trained for what our value is.
You are the judge of your immunity. So you have an external force. Are you capable of retaining focus in spite of said force? Are you not? Those are the questions that need to be asked, because we're not talking about just shunning situation. We can't. What do we need to do? We have to express
I feel like
it through focus.
education, like the natural guild, comes back all the way down to that. Like, the way I think about putting aside politics or anything, like the practical thing is
Immunity rides on
a-
education.
it's a natural guild stack.
So immunity rides on education. So you don't have immunity, which is where focus is situated, without education to tell you what the fuck focus is. Right?
Right.
So education,
Mhm.
yes, it's assumed. But education about what? And the very first thing is, quote unquote, education about education, and education about the very next guild layer, which is immunity. And that's where that comes into play.
Right.
So,
1 and 2.
So,
Right. And immunity seems to embody, or should, maybe, that that dynamic between abstract and concrete.
Yes, but you're talking about. Let's go back to what you were talking about, though. You're talking about bad actors, in some sense, coming into the guild. How do you deal with that from the perspective of, well, there's a situation that's happening that shouldn't be happening in the first place. That's the first sign, right? Like, that was like the first
Right.
imagining of the.
Everybody can feel it when they see a bad situation, people treated wrong.
And so, what do you do with that without shunning? That's where focus comes into play. For each individual encountering the external force, this is the process.
And shunning means to put outside. You are no longer part of my group. You are on the outside.
How do you avoid that?
It's a one or the other. It's very simple.
Yeah.
This is like a computer program 1-0. How do we stop that impulse to just say you're not me and go forward with nuance?
Yeah, and the focus question does not address it as like what's best for me, what's best for you, kind of a thing. It's addressing things like hygiene, nourishment, rest,
As its
fitness.
first,
How does this impact my hygiene? Am I allowing myself to think worse thoughts than I've thought? How does this impact my nutrition? Am I feeding off of the correct things or garbage? How does it affect my rest? Am I getting anxious over this? Or is this just another wave of happenings? Fitness. What's the input I have into that situation?
rest is like coming back to the autonomous
Exactly.
in a way.
And it comes before the action. Notice that? Fitness follows rest. Have you slept on the problem? Are you tackling it from the perspective of a fully grown human being? Fitness does not mean muscle fitness. It means fitting into the situation, the context, the play, the narrative. All of those things are extremely arbitrary for the moment,
Context.
but important to it for shaping up the next level stage of the dream. This is where you let go without forgetting,
No forget.
but no hold on.
No hold on. Yep. Well, that's the feedback principle.
So it does point out why
You
the autonomous
used the
nervous
model and it came back to you. Now learn from that and continue to use the model.
but also like why model doesn't end up being concrete ever. So like you've taken information out of your autonomous system, worked with it concretely.
Made a story or something.
Yeah, we work with it concretely, fed it back into it. Story disappears. The autonomous
This-
system gets reintegrated,
to me
comes
is
back
kind
up
of
to the next story.
Like mythologizing
That's the pattern, yeah.
protocols. So you've got behavior. What's the story?
I noticed that there's a very similar pattern in the way you can describe your actors and your visual components.
You're way beyond me. I think you're getting into the stack that you've described.
Yeah.
The developer environment.
So
Now you're talking about X state and probably plus something else.
yes, but so the language JSX,
What's that? JavaScript?
JavaScript that allows you to return tags as your output. That's the whole React thing that I've been talking about. So you write a JavaScript function, takes in JavaScript variables, but you
That's not
return
JSON. Not
No.
related to that.
JSON is like
JSX. Why is that?
because it lets you write HTML inside of JavaScript.
Oh, with tags.
Directly.
Okay, JSX. Right. So you're interfacing with the HTML standard.
So
Text output.
what I've learned since this isn't important for our next development session or anything like that, but maybe something to like ponder upon.
Hit me with it.
So those actors that we're talking about, being able to like simulate reality for a little bit and then push data back out to us to say this is what the outcome is, integrate that into our autonomous system. The simulation runners,
Okay.
their shapes are very close to what the tactile shapes might be. So if you have a form on this end, there might be a form-like object
Obviously.
sitting in your brain.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm saying that JSX could actually be utilized to describe those things over here
Okay.
as well. Now, I'm not planning to do that, but the shapes of the X state objects that we're going to get are going to really follow a lot of the interface objects that we're going to get.
I think she's out.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry. Tried to
No
tell
worries. No worries. That was my fault.
you. It's these things. What can you do?
So, if we were to describe an actor, which is not an HTML object, but the chances of our using the very same tags to say this is inside this is inside that, this is inside this.
For how the actor
are-
is acting. Like
Exactly.
what its body looks like.
If we were to transform X state to JSX and just write it that way, we would actually see, we could probably reuse the interfaces in the brain,
I would expect-
so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that's
It
what
would be
that's
like
what you would
way more
expect.
direct.
When you write something down into code, into concrete, you can reuse that over this kind of a bridge. That
Yeah.
you assume there's an extreme isomorphism with how the architectures have been set up, and now you have a bridge built which lets them melt into each other,
Yeah.
basically. Perfectly, it must be perfect.
Yeah, JSX, all it does, it takes like whatever tag structure you give it, and it's like, okay, give me a mapper function to map those tags to the function calls you want me to do.
Yeah.
So it's just a driver for more function
This
calling.
is representing the body. The body has this many senses, and like the arms and fingers and tips.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so maybe we can't do it now, but maybe in the future, we will have actors and tactile components all looking exactly the same, and then we'll introduce a small library that transforms components into their other descriptions, right? Like in the X states situation, and then we can eliminate the need
Yeah.
to write it
So-
out all again twice.
What I kind of got is you're talking about what is an actor. An actor does action through the tactile and through X amount of senses.
So no. Tactile, actor.
But I felt like you're just documenting it so that it can become a language.
Yes. Yes
Like
and no.
many, like
So-
there's actors, but there's tactile senses coming in at certain.
So imagine hand, thumb, finger. So overarching component.
Yeah, that's.
Inside of which finger.
You're just describing the tactile.
Also inside here, mirror image
Yeah.
of the tactile, but isn't tactile. It just does thing. Move finger. It does
Obviously.
those things.
So this layer in your head gives you that language layer that allows as a platform for other things higher up to interface through it.
Yeah, to the bottom things.
Yeah, without thinking about it.
So with JSX, we can have a component of hand, a component of each individual finger, combine a hand with individual finger components, And on the
Right.
tactile side, it'll be like a form. And on the processing side, the central nervous system, it'll be like what the form does. So, same components,
Mm-hmm.
very different systems, complete parallelism,
Right.
and removed from each other by yet another data managing system.
That seems amazing how far off the central reflection is from that, like real life, say inputting numbers on a gardening computer to like show what you've plotted here or there, something like tapping in here, but it aligns with the central architecture, right?
Which comes up and then disappears. And the only reason it comes up is because the tactile situation came up. And the only thing that keeps up the connection between the two is the thing in the middle, the autonomous system. So it will take the input. It will take the input from there. All of those things that have combined together will change it in some sense. It will reintegrate that back into itself. So the next time the input comes, it may not actually have to do any of those questions. It can be just like, that means that.
To something, yep. If there's a sense in that process of completion, like you'll feel the hallelujah or whatever,
Caching.
and then now it's different when it comes in.
Or
Caching, you're right. Yep.
Or just cache it. Yeah.
Because you cache different states and they progress.
And the cache updates.
Damn. So what we at? We got probably about half hour, let's say, 20 minutes, till our ride appears. And as far as the 4-hour standard,
Have we touched enough
We're,
on the fact that
almost at 3 hours,
So
so we've got time.
so archetype and guild tend to be like on the extreme ends of things.
Right?
Guild is the only thing you can literally touch, and model being the only thing that's relevant to express an either or. So there's like a weird dependency articulation that's going on
Mm-hmm.
that it might be really hard to
Like
through capture.
Through the concrete, you could never access the archetype without going through the
yeah.
model,
Right.
the abstraction.
But there's literally nothing in the archetype unless the concrete feeds something to it through the model.
Right.
There's
to
also
to
that.
think about it, right?
And then there's nothing concrete unless it's some kind of
And
archetype fed through the model.
Interestingly, the model that's fed leads us to imagine something that's in dynamic motion. It's not just the model itself of like describing this part, describing that part.
Right.
What,
and there's no steps.
when we come up to that third layer, the archetype, then we're talking about something in motion constantly, which you can't
Right, because
represent with a static model.
because the archetype just changes based upon context.
Right, man. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is a strange statement to make without a lot of context.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody
It's
understands
about
that without
like,
context.
perception mechanics and what we experience in the moment. And normally we experience objects coming and going within our perception. Sometimes those objects are objects about an abstraction, like what is a ball? Now we've all just imagined a ball in our head, but that's an abstract object has just come up.
Sorry.
What we had discussed was yet again
Let
to
me
the,
do
to
my
the central thing,
Let me do my interruption.
the
thing.
archetype.
You can't have any concrete object without the initial abstraction of what potentially that object might be. You can't have
But
ball.
kind of vice versa, too.
You can't. Yeah. This is the key. You can't have a ball without ballness.
So you've experienced something that is like a ball so many times
Right.
That's what your reference in that moment to understand what is a ball, to visualize it in your head.
But also, you can't express ballness without balls. There, that's the loop around. Like, you can't have one without the other. You can't think about balls without the concept of ballness. You can't think about the concept of ballness without any kind of balls to begin with.
What if you're a female?
Well, we're not talking about we're not talking about testicles now, are we?
Sorry, I had to.
Oh, I know. I was resisting the same
You're waiting
thing.
for it, I'm sure.
I was resisting it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, not those balls.
the ideal.
You frogs. You can't have frogs without the concept of what a frog might be, and you can't have a concept of what a frog might be without there being frogs for you to examine. So there's
One would assume yes, although
there's a correlation between two. This is what I was
in
actu-
society you would encounter
not
that,
in
yes.
society. I was actually thinking about this in one of my breaks.
But
Is this-
somebody could make something up like there's just unicorns. Don't you believe it?
This is how you overcome the notion of a horizon. So you
To build a model and then rise up like a ladder to the next level.
but still being restricted to the layer that you're in. So you're in the concrete layer, but you will need the frog myth to understand frogginess in any narrative that appears above your objective thing. So how do you know this object is a frog? But it's by that myth. It's going to say this object is a frog.
Mm-hmm. You'd watch Sesame Street, for example.
Basically. But at the same time, if that layer never actually gives you any frogs, that notion of frogness is not going to be there.
Right. Well, maybe.
And so this is a way to say that there's always two layers. You only have access to one layer, the fundamental one, not the significant one.
Mm.
However, the horizon point between the significant and the fundamental one is where the two layers come together. So the
Right.
ability to see said horizon has to do with the ability to take the abstraction to concrete and backwards again properly, aka the mature way to do it. That's where maturity comes in.
Echoing
it's
this
pretty straightforward,
reflection of a holonic organization.
right? Yeah, it's all straightforward that way, right?
Right.
So, yes, there is a horizon, but the horizon is present to us in the sense from concrete and abstract, and having to straddle the two notions, and by doing that maturely, there's isomorphism between the two. That isomorphism between the two is what bridges the gap in the horizon. How it allows us to break out from our neurological operating system into the social
And
one.
it's a sort of never-ending operation. It's
Right.
not one
It's
that
a bootstrap.
stops.
It's a bootstrap.
It's continual. Has to be.
It's bootstrapped to the
In each moment,
to every
ideally,
to
right?
every sense.
Like we always want to keep coming back to that ideally kind of higher function, standing back, stepping back, noticing patterns,
That's the entire education system of meditation right there.
an idea of like getting triggered by whenever you have an impulse, you feel an impulse, get triggered by that to examine the impulse. Right?
Habituate yourself differently, basically. But you see, like there's this connection between being stuck in two layers, having to only being able to deal with one layer, with the second one being a horizon, and the isomorphism through it is what facilitates the actual thing.
You're
And
talking about simplifying this bridge between two language stacks when you can create that isomorphic bridge.
I'm
That
I'm
may have been
talking-
a harken tangent back to the.
I'm really trying to talk about how to bridge the concept of narrative being beyond the horizon with objective sort of concrete reality being just shy of it. And the fact that you're stuck in this layer, you have this horizon, but the to bridge the gap, so to speak, it has to deal it has to deal with that order and chaos situation in which one sees the other.
Modeling the self model within the layer. Developed over time.
That the other portion of it was, let me just remind myself. And so, in our most concrete layer, there's these objects floating in and out of the ether, so to speak, bouncing off of our
Appear, disappear.
right. That is actually a form of chaos for us, whereas the narrative is the thing that orders it back together. This is an inversion of responsibility of order and chaos in the model.
This is over the line of
Neurological to social OS.
right, which is a horizon jump.
Right. You don't experience words, you experience
So this is what we
effects.
call the upper horizon, if you will, in the neurochemical operating system model.
Right. So in this model, we also have a situation in which our concrete layer is chaotic because of the ephemerality of it, with the narrative being the thing that shapes its order.
That's what you just said, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is basically a way to not crossing the horizon, but receiving objects of narrative underneath the horizon to shape it all together. So as each narrative comes back as a single object, in your experience, it ties to the other objects through the narrative.
It feels like there's a bunch of narrative or objects, just floating up, which represent potential narratives in like a foam, but only some survive to actually be accepted as a narrative.
And then formulating objects that represent those in your qualitative
Solidifying.
experience to give reason to the quantitative outcomes from the narratives.
Justifying.
They said that. I feel this. I feel this, and that says that.
So it
But that says
becomes
that, and I feel
becomes
this.
sound bites, etc.
It's a way to throw yourself out into the ether in your neurochemical operating system, which is chaotic, and get the order back,
Well,
which is
we do
ordered.
have about 20 minutes left, so I propose a short break, and maybe we shall resume some thoughts, some chills.
Let's do it.
Yeah, buddy. Be right back. as always. And we're back for our final minutes.
So, wouldn't it be, isn't it like interesting? The things that we attribute to the more fundamental elements of our experience, like touch and thought, all are getting channeled through actually a very monotonous, autonomous system. Hold on a second.
Of course.
Oh, I'm not interested in that having that many fights.
And final bits.
The final bits.
The connection between the dashboard technological software stack and the model dashboard guild stack.
So check this out. The thing we're talking about, the being autonomous, is also the persistence layer. It's the thing that gets
The
kept
media.
from. Yeah, it's
The media keeps getting
from
read.
time to time.
The media through every cycle gets picked up and read.
and
So-
regurgitated.
How is
differently.
that far off?
Hmm.
It's right there.
I'm not saying it's far off. I've just take a note of the fact that it's the thing that I'm equating to the spinal cord as being the general autonomous system is closer to the thing that's being preserved across time, whereas the thing that I compare to the brain or the tactile systems come and go.
Okay, so that's a good note that to you in your way of visualizing it, the spine itself, like the main channel, but the connection between what's above and what's kind of being tactile, you're metaphorically representing the autonomous by the spine. The collection, the bundling of nerves is what you're
Just pre-brain entry.
okay. This
And
is has to
still
be
keep-
seen as a
and s-
metaphor.
and still reactive.
Has to be seen as metaphor.
Yeah, but also it's a valid metaphor in the sense that like that idea of like the moving your hand away from the hot stove is the kind of information that's literally spine coordinated versus
Right.
the brain coordinated.
I mean, there are neurons.
That's like
everywhere.
It's biological fact.
I think there's like lots of neurons distributed throughout the body.
That's
like
not the point.
The gut can make decisions and stuff.
Yes,
like-
yes, that's not the point though. The point isn't that they are all
Well,
can
we're
make
discussing
decisions
the-
locally.
The delineation
Which-
between like a dumb thing and like something that learns.
So, yes, but also, this is a thing that learns based upon the feedback it had from the things it used for learning. So, it can be dumb, right? But its responses to stimuli could be informed by very non dumb systems, the brain being one of them. the central nervous system being one of them, and the idea of correlating heat
Classic
and
argument,
response and movement away from heat as a response after the fact of learning that heat hurts can be attributed to that. So the first roundabout,
But it's
it
cool
went through
that-
it went through the spine.
It's
it
cool that
registered
you
as
still
pain.
have a hand left. You didn't just leave it lying on the burner,
Right. There's that.
even though you hadn't learned your lesson yet.
It's difficult to separate this from blank slate to bootstrapped system because everything
Yeah.
is bootstrapped. So we're
There's
trying. We're
lots
trying
of
to.
instincts built in.
We're trying to pretend that a bootstrapped system is blank slate. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but just imagine the
So
different traits and behaviors pulled up like through DNA.
So the coolest part about this is the fact that the motion to move away from the hot object is pre-programmed before the response to the object being painful is registered way up top. So
That's
the
a recoil.
the recoil reaction to it has been pre-built in, but it hasn't been pre-built in out of nowhere. There was a response to it that knows about it and knows the
It's
consequence
because
of it.
not that, but most of the things that didn't know the response to it didn't know what it was about. The
Died,
nervous
sure.
systems that didn't understand that died off.
There's that.
Only left was the ones that did respond properly.
So yeah, there's the pre-built element for it. But again, this is like trying to shoehorn the bootstrapped, the blank slate system into the bootstrapped system. We're trying to imagine both as one, and that kind of conflicts with itself. There's going to be pre-built reactions, but we're trying to say how would those reactions get pre-built. So it's a chicken and egg situation. So let's not talk baby, but talk about pre-human, whatever species that's necessary.
I think I follow what you're on, and I like to.
There will be a cycle of building that up.
I like civilization, but what about like pre-civ? You could say as one term, or like tribal civ.
They're not really civs though.
Well,
With civs being like an overarching mythology and all of
depends
that
how
stuff.
you want to define that.
We number one. Usually that's civ.
Okay, even if you were to describe a civ, it wouldn't end there, and you would still have to describe the meta and what's going on with society.
Well, that's just by necessity.
To have an ideology is not. That's not the end of it.
Well, that's why every civ picks up a mythology that predated it and then transforms it as a form of justification, aka making it into a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Calling it culture.
Yeah, and that hinges on the
It looks the same everywhere. It doesn't matter.
the non-feedback method of not doing feedback. That's what it preys upon, if you will.
Yeah.
Organized religion, as it has been in its worst.
Organized religion has been in this format since forever. It is its worst,
Well,
but it's also its most stablest.
you could say that the state had always relied upon some sort of justifying organization, mythologically interfacing organization to stabilize the myth of the people, to keep the taxes going, etc.
Oh, so you notice how I said that there is like a two-layer situation that must be tackled from the single-layer situation, and the
Two
only
layers
way
of what?
to cross the horizon from the neurochemical operating system to the neurological one, you have to embed objects of the narrative inside, and so
Right.
you have to process it all under one layer
It's an
instead of
isomorphism.
crossing the layer.
Coming up, yep.
So take advantage of that, but do something different. Force the issue, force the narrative, force the objects of narrative to appear in the processing of the neurochemical operating system. Trigger anxieties, trigger regrets, trigger the dream, trigger the ego.
Are you talking about like
So forcing
classic control
so
methods?
forcing a narrative across the border in the form of control. So different variant of the same process, way darker, way more in line with what we have.
The system.
Just imagine saying something taboo. Like as soon as you do that, you cross that horizon, and the system will really readily feed you back of an object of regret.
So very quickly then, maybe, the Darren Allen situation, which was simply comments wanted to be made to extend his narrative on one of his latest pieces to say, okay, yeah, but, and then what? And there's something more to it than just this kind of, what do they call it, like, I wrote it down, and it was a specific word. The Gnostic view. That was my impression that I took from your description, which I haven't read his article, latest one of them, but that it's a Gnostic view in that it's just like God punishing you forever and ever, and that's all there is to it. It's like kind of an evil world, and there's archons and stuff. Like, I don't know too much about Gnosticism. That's kind of what I gathered about it, was it's a reification of this good versus evil thing, and you either just join one side or the other and fight, and like there's
The
no
economist.
there's no release
It's
from
the
the story.
economist. Yeah,
You don't release from that story.
I get more of a Hinduism view from him, and that's kind of what he says as well in his actual writings. I take issue with his aversion to Buddhism, and
because it
like,
it
and
has too
how
many
it
lists.
yes, one of the reasons being is that it took it took something that would have been a strictly religious experience out of the hands of the strictly religious, but it also did another thing by breaking shit down, and by breaking shit down, anybody who is on top already is going to be like too simplistic.
You're talking about
not the thing.
Darren's like story overall, like apprehension of the zeitgeist and how to approach it, and what to inject.
Yeah, and also the futility of the representational element that occurs in the natural course of existence of human beings. So, one of the things that the Buddha pointed out is that human beings, apart from animals, do tend to live in a world of their own making. There's nothing wrong with that.
Seeming abstract, but
exactly, exactly the point. Nothing wrong with noting it. Just seeing it for what it is.
and honestly, at every level of the stack, the holonic stacking, we see things that feel arbitrary in the automation of it. And
Nick, why are the cells the way they
just
are?
like
Why is
watch a-
DNA the way it is?
a fox run a path sniffing like here and there or something, right? It just
It's
seems
doing it
totally chaotic.
To us,
right?
it's arbitrary. To it, it's doing its own pathfinding.
Right.
Together, it's absurd. There's no logic behind it that fits together.
But yet it is highly intelligent. Things are happening, right?
You got hyper narratives. What the meta narrative is not showing is the connections. That's because it's obfuscated. It's obfuscated in the form of speciation, but it's also obfuscation in the way we do civilization. And that obfuscation isn't helping us whatsoever. We're doing an arbitrary one. There is no
So-
method to it.
When you have a proper model, all obfuscated stories or narratives get melted into one, it seems like.
Yeah, the obfuscation disappears.
Right.
Because the model gets repeated in narrative.
Common terms.
Model. Model speaking about model speaking about model. How can it ever deviate? Right? Like, it's literally locked into that situation by definition.
Right? And this idea of like the tactile, the autonomous, the central, that we've experienced something, and
I think I should have mentioned this earlier, but check this out. The polyglottic coin relay is there. Is that thing. It's just like one,
Right.
one layer of it, another layer
That's
of it, another layer
that's
of it.
applying it down into the concrete, which is like this crazy twisted octopus
Yeah.
looking through a magnifying glass and just touching the world.
Yeah. And so the polyglottic part is like all the tactile information becoming all of the internal information, coming back to the logical information.
Right. There has to be this complete wave inward and out, then bounce and like an outward reflective.
And the middle layer between all of those bounces is the thing that keeps existing over time. So the center is ephemeral, outside is ephemeral.
The entire being must feel the wave come into its full core and
Yeah.
reflect back out. That's kind of interesting image.
Being in the moment.
Have you been to a wave pool like
You once.
slides
Yeah, once.
where there's like an artificial wave pool? Those are cool, man.
They also drown people.
Well, no, I assume at a safe rate because there's lots of community around. There's lifeguards, there's video, especially AI now, to like, oh, now this one head isn't accounted for, like, where did it go? Like, it's literally identified every single person.
I mean, when you create problems in search of solutions, you find solutions.
Sometimes.
That's how you make money.
Blessed be. And save on insurance.
But check this out. Another cool metaphor that's happening because of the same structure, like the polyglottic coin, and going through the middle to the center and back out the center through the middle
Right.
to the tactile world. It gives the position of the brain, so to speak, this isolated in a cave, dark cave metaphor as well. Like
The illusion.
the main thing that like represents all of the external things is one layer removed from it, isolated by an entire layer, and B, plays out the scenarios through its own reckonings, isolated. So it only has dashboard-like vibes outwards. What does that do to your individuality feelings?
Damn.
But the cave metaphor, whatever.
No, sorry, I gapped out the last few seconds. I assume I was just
So
giving
the polyglot
proper response.
If we take the polyglottic coin relay as a circle, and then the inner reflections as an inside circle, and then the core brain as the middle. So we're touching on the same
Yeah.
nervous systems.
So you're trying to show
the
how
central nervous system, the
that-
autonomic.
that one idea of the polyglottic coin relay encapsulates these three, if you see it in like a
Concentric circles.
concentric inner, outer, some kind of pattern.
Right. So your extremities on the outside, the autonomous stuff in the middle, and your central nervous system being the very core,
Mm-hmm.
gives the same impression of like your brain being isolated in your skull. Everything is felt through your skin, and in between the two you have an entire central nervous system that manages the interactions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same picture in a
Quite
different
smoothly,
way.
I might add.
And that donut in the middle is the thing that persists over time. Everything else around it and everything else inside of it you know what I'm saying about that?
Right. It seems like the automation layer is obviously more persistent, but something that from which is bootstrapping material for both the upper and lower layers in the moment.
Well,
to gain
it's
relevance.
and if you think about it, it's the body that has to exist throughout time, regardless of what it feels or thinks.
Yeah.
Feels by touch, thinks by.
It doesn't matter what we think; it just is existing.
It's the body is the thing that continues. Hence, everything is stored within it,
Classic trope.
so to speak.
The model is just what already is, dude.
Bruh.
It's what already exists.
It's what you perceive.
Yeah, I think now's a good time to pack her up, though.
Yeah.
Clean it up, be ready to peace out. We're 3.5 hours. It's a good night. Yep, and
Zach Brannigan. I wonder what part of Leela is this?
patting one's own back.
No, oh, you've never seen the movies, have you?
No, I don't think so. No.
So in
Bender's Greatest Bend.
in the
I'm gonna stop it though, eh?
That's fine. That's fine. In the
Okay.
movie,
All right,
peace